Chapter 1, A Court of Blood and Bindings. Short summary. 20-year-old Emelin, nicknamed M, has abusive parents that she wants to get away from. Unfortunately, she can't afford to, which is something that many millennials and Gen Z will find extremely unrelatable, I'm sure. M has forbidden magic that she has been told to hide her entire life. There's a bit of a chosen one vibe going on already. The chapter ends with her being gaslit by her father. She claims she saw a Fae executioner land in their backyard, but her father says that's impossible because they just built an iron ward around the island to keep Fae out. The setting is an archipelago. Emelin lives on a small island named Cathra. Humans are under oppression by their Fae rulers, forced to pay high taxes, but without receiving any actual benefits for the taxes paid. Instead, their tributes only serve to enrich the wealthy and cruel Fae rulers. As an American, I can only imagine what that feels like. Truly an imaginative work of fiction that helps me escape reality. Anyways, M desperately wants to leave the island but can't afford to, and at the end of the chapter, she gets her first glance of MMC, a silent, beautiful, and extraordinarily dangerous Fae named Creon. Detailed summary. Our main character, 20-year-old Emelin, nicknamed M, is working feverishly in the basement, keeping her father's painting business afloat. No island pun intended. Ulda is pregnant with her second already, Mother had told me yesterday, her lips tight with annoyance, and she's younger than you are. Her parents are upstairs arguing about her, and they are generally unhappy they haven't been able to get rid of Emelin by marrying her off to some local yokel. Several tensions are established in this first chapter. First, her penny-pinching father has a big business deal coming up, and he's already looking to blame Emelin if he fails, saying she will embarrass him and jeopardize his business. Second, M's parents are abusive, starving her and criticizing her for not being a human incubator, and also because she possesses forbidden Fae magic. It's implied that if the villagers found out she has Fae ancestry and magical Fae power, it would lead to the ruin of her and her parents. This is a plot hole because in Chapter 4 it's revealed that everyone knew she has forbidden Fae magic, and they all hated and feared her because of it. Kind of like Naruto having the Nine-Tails chakra sealed in him, except imagine his parents are alive and mad that he isn't pregnant yet. Well, my father snapped, it won't be much of a party for her either if she accidentally obliterates the buffet tables, will it? Her father is worried she will lose control of her magic, as she has done in the past. He doesn't mean obliterate the buffet tables like a competitive eater would. Continuing, M is sad about the economy not working for her, but can't do anything about it, since her parents are looking for any excuse to deduct her pay and continue exploiting her until they find a way to get rid of her. Her parents call her upstairs to conclude their argument, and she volunteers to stay home on the day of the festival to avoid causing anyone trouble, even promising to do extra chores to placate her parents. Her parents are happy with her white lie. Is a lie only harmless when it's white? Is it a coincidence that the wealthiest and safest human city in this book is called White City? Some questions are best left unanswered. On the day of the festival, she finishes all her chores early, but she tries to stay busy to avoid the bad thoughts. My absence, if it had even been noted, didn't seem to bother anyone in the slightest. While preparing more paints for her father's business, she accidentally stains her dress red. To avoid her parents freaking out, she's going to do the one thing they forbid her to do: magic. It makes sense if you don't think about it. Since she really needs the money, she has to compromise her morals and do something forbidden. But I would lose those coins. Not in that way. She's just going to magically do the laundry, of course. She wasn't going to be happy if she came home to find the tunic ruined. Not happy at all. I was no longer the little girl she'd send to bed without dinner. She couldn't set on me with a dust beater anymore. There was no reason to be scared. She uses her magic to leach the red paint from her dress, transforming it into a destructive magical bolt, aiming it at a nearby pot and shattering it. Why does she have to destroy a pot with her magic? Why not a bush or blade of grass or dirt? Anyways, colors are like fuel which can be spent. Red paint is fuel for destruction magic, blue is for healing. She uses blue to mend the pot. Also, if she doesn't exhaust a color, it restores itself. Infinite energy glitch, I guess. But I had to be sure I'd exhausted the color from my clothes entirely so it couldn't come back. A partly used pink, no matter how faint, would restore itself in a matter of hours, proving exactly what rules I had violated to get rid of it. Only a fully depleted surface would remain white forever, as I needed it. I'm not going to touch her comment about how white is right, but it's too bad she didn't use her blue healing magic to become the village doctor. I feel like that would have made more money than mixing paints in her father's basement. Blue for healing. I should be able to fix this. While she's doing her forbidden magic in the privacy of her completely open backyard, a tall Fae male with wings suddenly lands. He's dressed like a Reaper main from Overwatch in all black. The stranger was tall, with an advantage of at least 6 inches over me. She recognizes him as the Silent Death. She should be terrified, but he's so dang sexy. They call him the Silent Death, the mother's executioner, because he kills without sound and leaves none capable of speaking in his wake. Maybe because he's wearing all black and he's a little dark-skinned, and she's just a young girl from a small town, she bravely offers him some grape drink. It's warm and you must have been flying for a while. I should have some cool grape juice left. She notices that he could definitely work as a door greeter for Abercrombie & Fitch if he ever gets tired of the serial killer thing. His face was a thing of impossible beauty, like an overly favorable painted portrait come to life. All sharp angles, all unreadable shadows. High cheekbones, hard lips. A star line of ink ran through one dark eyebrow, like a scar marked for eternity. Without saying a word, the tall, tatted winged supermodel flies off, having seen her forbidden magic. Realizing the Iron Ward everyone is celebrating actually does nothing to keep Fae away, Em is freaking out and runs to tell everyone. She finds her father and interrupts his important business deal, just as he predicted. She gets the main character treatment. Instead of being distracted by the celebration, everyone in town stops to laugh at her. Nobody believes her, and her father calls her crazy. "You embarrassed me, Emelin." Doing the math, we can calculate that if Em has an average walking speed, that's about 9 miles or 14.5 kilometers. In a square, it'd be roughly 2.25 miles per side of the square, or 3.6 kilometers squared. Pedantic side note, islands are notorious for having a lack of building resources, especially metals like iron. Now, I can believe a hot, tatted winged supermodel Fae flew out of the sky, but I just can't believe the villagers found 9 miles worth of iron on an island. If they're under embargo by Fae oppressors, it can't be imported either. The chapter ends with Emelin questioning her sanity. Unfortunately, she can't find any gap in the barrier to prove her hypothesis. But what she can do is go to sleep thinking about how hot the Fae guy is. And yet I had seen the bastard. No amount of smothering warmth could have made me imagine something so perfectly frightening, something so hauntingly beautiful. When sleep finally found me, I dreamt of swooshing velvet wings and dark eyes so bottomless they might lead straight to hell. Throughout the book, their dynamic is that he's corrupting her and she's redeeming him with her innocence and goodness. That's why she phrases it as his eyes will lead her straight to hell. Chapter 2, quick summary, is about Creon's abduction of Emelin. He burns down her whole village, including her family's house, but reassures her that everyone is being evacuated. Then he flies Emelin around so she can see everyone leaving safely in boats, before flying her off to the Crimson Court where all the Fae live. Longer summary of Chapter 2 is, FMC wakes up to her whole town burning except her house. FMC tries to kill MMC, but he easily catches her red magic in his hand. She begs him to spare her life. Once again, we have an overpowered MMC who has FMC at his mercy. Quote, "No, it had become a meaningless chant without conviction or hope. Zara, help me, M-. Was he going to abduct me? Like Fae males did, and the women they took were never seen again, ... No, please, I ... End quote. If that sounds rapey, remember, all of Creon's terrible behavior towards Emelin is later going to be retconned as secretly loving and good. She also begs him to at least let her get some stuff out of her house before he burns it down, but he ignores her. The huge power imbalance blurs the lines of consent. In the midst of this life-threatening scene, FMC is once again noting horny details. Quote, "His eyes didn't let go of me. A fierce, focused look of what was nearly ... need? ? Oh, Zara have mercy." End quote. So there is always an association between MMC's overwhelming power, FMC's submission to his power, and how this is supposedly erotic. Creon offers his coat to help keep Emelin warm. MMC keeping FMC warm is a common trope, and she tries to refuse in a tsundere way, but he makes her do it for her own good. The definition of tsundere is a character who is outwardly cold, harsh, or hostile, but gradually reveals a softer, affectionate, and sweet side towards someone, often a love interest. This personality archetype, primarily from Japanese fiction like anime and manga, is defined by the contrast between their prickly exterior and hidden gentle nature, which they struggle to admit or show publicly. Creon treats her like a toddler, while she begs him not to burn down her house and belongings. He explains via writing notes that he evacuated the entire town to White City, an expensive safe haven for humans, free from Fae. It's revealed later that he doesn't talk because his voice has been taken away magically. FMC doesn't believe him, but he overpowers her physically and abducts her so she can see the townspeople leaving safely in boats. Even though flying must be loud, she is conveniently able to overhear exactly where the townspeople are going and to confirm her parents' safety. Quote, "They were singing the Ballad of the White City, so they were going. They were really, truly going to that place where most humans only dreamed of living, where there were no yearly tributes, no abductions, no rebellions, where they would be safe," end quote. The chapter ends here, and there's never any explanation in this book as to why White City is free from Fae oppression. In fact, it's later revealed that the Fae Queen has enough magic power to curse an entire continent and make it uninhabitable, burning anyone who goes there alive. So basically, she can turn any land into Florida, but for no reason, White City is rich and safe from her. It's a little bit suspicious that the only wealthy and safe place for humans is named White City, but I don't want to jump to any conclusions yet. Chapter 3 short summary is about Creon taking Emelin to the Crimson Court, the heart of faekind, and Emelin's first meeting with the terrifying and malevolent ruler of the Fae named Mother. Emelin realizes Creon is lying to Mother. He says he killed everyone on her island, named Cathra, but he actually evacuated them safely. Chapter 3 longer summary. They fly for hours. He abducts her non-consensually to the Crimson Court, the heart of faekind. FMC knows this place is death for humans, but she refuses to run because she knows she can't outrun MMC. He once again yanks her by the wrist, non-consensually dragging her into the court. It's especially noted that all the Fae are tall, but MMC is, quote, "still one of the tallest," end quote. Just before the meeting with Mother, he drags her into a private chamber, and she is thinking he could rape her if he wanted to. He just doesn't seem to want to. She demands to know why he's taken her here, but she has to reveal she is a virgin and that she is insecurely confident about her looks compared to his. Quote, "his vexingly perfect face," end quote. Once again, death, abduction, and potential rape are portrayed as erotic somehow. He warns her not to reveal her magic or she'll be tortured and executed. I don't know if I'm missing something here, but this point seems forgotten for the rest of the book because Emelin ends up repeatedly using her magic where Fae might see whenever she gets mad, which is a lot. The walls are made of human bones and skulls. Creon drags her to the Fae Mother and Matriarch. Emelin notices how incredibly beautiful the Fae Mother is, quote, "a face like a powdered porcelain doll, with large blue eyes and pillow lips, ... long white hair, ... the empty color of exhausted magic, a body that curved and dipped in all the right places, ... end quote. Again, FMC is generally insecure, and there are several instances where she points out that Fae women are far more beautiful than herself. Some reviewers even said these descriptions sound like they're written by a man, which I think refers to a breast comparison scene that comes up later, the kind of comparison you'd see in a trash anime. MMC, Creon, and Mother enjoy belittling FMC and terrorizing her, making her show submission and respect. Everyone laughs when Mother says to Creon, quote, "the gods have mercy, we all remember what happened last time a young lady amused you a little too much, don't we?" End quote. Mother thinks Creon tortured FMC's island to death rather than evacuate them safely. Creon didn't explain this deception beforehand to her, instead blindly trusting FMC to figure it out and confirm his lie on the spot. Even though he remains emotionally distant, she, quote, consents, end quote, to go flying with him again. Quote, "he gave me a curt nod, the golden light of the orbs playing over his face with that movement. I sucked in a breath and stepped forward, closer to the tall, muscular body towering over me. 'Fine then, let's go.' He scooped me into his arms in reply, and with a powerful wing beat, we shot into the void again. She says, fine, then let's go, as if her consent somehow matters in this scenario, or as if she can give consent while she's terrified that he could just kill her at any moment. Chapter 4, short summary. It establishes the relationship between Creon and Emelin. He explains her Fae ancestry, along with the fact that everyone in her village actually hated her and was scared of her, but they couldn't get rid of her due to a magical Fae curse. And then he binds himself to her in a magical contract that says he cannot harm her, but she must help him assassinate the evil Fae queen called Mother. More detailed summary. FMC notes how insanely fast Creon flies, once again emphasizing his power over her. Creon takes her to his house on a dark spot on the Fae Island. It's magical and cozy and well furnished, but there's only one bed. Here we get the forced proximity trope. Emelin says, quote, I was not going to sleep in his bed. I'd rather make myself at home on the floor than anywhere close to that savage body, end quote. But the next paragraph says, quote, his movements were efficient and deliberate, even the slightest twist of his fingers measured by the inch, a creature of utter perfection, the ugliest kind of perfection, end quote. So we're supposed to believe that she's forced to sleep with him because somebody might see. And this whole thing about forced proximity and potentially being raped here is portrayed as exciting, and it's very disturbing. Uh-oh guys, where will FMC sleep? Will she be raped? How exciting. FMC affirms she will refuse to sleep with him, while also going on and on about how perfect he is. So we can tell she secretly wants to be raped, right guys? FMC begins to have a mental breakdown over losing her house, her parents, her whole life. So naturally Creon is slow to give answers and then drops a bomb that FMC is adopted on her. Creon to M, quote, you were a foundling. They didn't dare get rid of you. Foundling's curse, end quote. She was only adopted because of foundling's curse, meaning if her adoptive parents abandoned her, they would have been cursed. Apparently everyone in her village knew except her, and somehow they all kept this a secret from her for her entire life. Very believable that nobody would ever accidentally gossip, and somehow she went 20 years without ever knowing that everyone in the village hates her because of the foundling's curse. It's a plot hole because the first chapter is her parents arguing about how to hide M's Fae magic. Why would they tell everyone in the village she has Fae ancestry? It would make more sense to do what the Dursleys did in Harry Potter and just convince people she's a bad child with bad parents and that they have to keep her under harsh discipline to make up for her bad tendencies. It does not make sense for Emelin's parents to announce to everyone that she has Fae ancestry and is protected by the Foundling's curse, but then try to hide her Fae magic from the same people. Creon also reveals that iron has no effect on him or any other Fae, but other Fae just pretend iron hurts them to deceive humans. I think this is an important point to note because when he makes the magical pact with her, she doesn't know if Fae really have to honor their magical promises, because what if that's a lie too, just like the lie that they're harmed by iron or can't cross iron barriers? How does she even know what spell he's really casting when he claims to be casting a magical binding of protection between them? Creon also reveals that FMC is the only unbound Fae magic wielder. All others are bound and unable to harm Mother with their magic. Creon explains how Mother is careful to bind all Fae babies, but that FMC's parents did such a good job hiding her that Mother never found out. This also doesn't make sense because we are shown that a lot of humans want to rebel against Mother, so why would every human physician accurately report any baby with Fae ancestry? They have a lot of incentive to lie, even if they have no clue that Mother can only be hurt by unbound people with Fae ancestry. It's not like Emelin looks any different from a normal human. It would be an impossible task to try to track down all births and ensure that no Fae male ever impregnated a human woman, even though Fae males like Ophion are shown to be very rapey later in Chapter 7. It's also a plot hole that if half Fae have a maximum power level, what's stopping Creon from just breeding an army of unbound half Fae in secret? He's had over 300 years and he just waits around for what? FMC accuses Creon of rushing her in front of Mother without enough information, but Creon says explaining would have been riskier. Yeah, so that's obviously not true. Why would explaining be riskier than letting Emelin blurt out stuff ignorantly in front of the extremely cruel queen? FMC also notes how Creon enjoys making her beg for scraps of info and enjoys his superiority over her. M asks Creon how they can take on the queen without her finding out. Quote, "Creon just looked at me. That infuriating, impassive look again. Either he was calling me stupid for not figuring it out yet, or he was trying to make me beg for more information. He liked this, didn't he? Liked being the unchallenged authority, the high-born Fae bringing his amusing human captive to her knees, M-." End quote. Then there's more rapey vibes. Quote, "No, but you're strong-arming me into playing your whore regardless." End quote. Apparently their cover story is that he abducted her to keep her as a sex slave or plaything. FMC is mad he didn't ask for her consent in this plan, but he smugly points out there are no other possible plans. What? This is also not true. Creon assumes, correctly, that she wants to help overthrow Mother to weaken the Fae kingdom. Creon then claims that other people pass by the house, so she has to sleep in his bed to maintain their cover story, rather than sleep on his couch. Quote, "People pass by, would give you away." End quote. To which M responds, quote, "He was right. Why was he always right?" End quote. Wow, this is straight out of every romance book ever. Poppy literally said this about Hawk in From Blood and Ashes. He also claims to help her find her real parents after she helps overthrow Fae Mother. Then he non-consensually magically binds himself to FMC in a ritual spell. He pretends it's consensual, but he has a death grip on her arm, and she really has no other options here. This spell is supposed to enforce that Creon cannot harm FMC, but how would she know what spell he actually cast? Chapter 5, short summary. Emelin adjusts to living with Creon. She finds it both dangerous and exciting. She doesn't want to trust him yet, but she finds him fascinating and beautiful. Despite their shared goal and magical pact, her attitude towards Creon is hot and cold, or what is called tsundere. Long summary, Chapter 5. FMC is in bed next to Creon, and she is both panicking and fantasizing about him. Her anxiety attack goes away when he clamps his wings down on her, pressing her into the bed. After dissociating, FMC admits, quote, "Perhaps all I needed was a hug," end quote. FMC wakes up in the Silent Death's bed, noting how exciting that is. Quote from later in this chapter, "His beauty was just another cruel Fae trick, but I wouldn't let it defeat me. I was going to be civil, perhaps, but nothing more than that. Composed and cooperative, but never compliant. If he wanted blind obedience, he had found the wrong mage to toy with," end quote. So FMC notes how she wants to be tsundere towards Creon and not give in to him too easily. Then she starts evaluating how sexy her body is, or rather isn't, compared to Fae, and finds herself totally inadequate by comparison, especially her breasts and short stature. And I think this is the quote that threw off some of the reviewers and made them think it's written by a man. Quote, "Fae females at the Crimson Court were tall and round-breasted and altogether stunning. I was ... bony, my mother used to tell me, a head shorter than even the shortest Fae I'd seen, wingless and bland. Whatever blood my Fae parent had given me, it wasn't worth much," end quote. She uses his bath, which is the size of a lake, and has a full apothecary store full of potions and lotions, lavender and jasmine, basically like a bath bomb which has glitter and scents. A single-use bath bomb is roughly $8 in real life, so I guess she can forgive all the murder and torturing he's done, because this bath is amazing. FMC feels self-loathing about being part Fae, and also about not feeling pretty compared to them. After taking a bath in Creon's tub, she picks from a pile of dresses. Why does Creon have a pile of dresses? We'll never know. FMC is hungry, and Creon reassures her that this food is ethically sourced, not from human tributes, only from Fae farms. This is some organic free-range marketing nonsense for sure. With the way Mother Fae has a death grip on everyone, who is to say that Fae farm workers are treated any more fairly than human tributors? Why the need to feel morally superior when they're all being held hostage by her? FMC shows more tsundere appreciation for Creon's free-range, probiotic, organic, superfood, ethically sourced cacao reassurance. Creon's note about his ethically sourced food also contains M-dashes. After she eats a bunch of his delicious food, she says, "Thank goodness this dress isn't too tight. It would have burst at the seams." And here we have the first mention of Helmer, a guy that Emelin liked for 6 months during her failed seamstress apprenticeship. Helmer is a human male who serves as the standard "MMC is so much better than a regular handsome human" comparison trope. Helmer only comes up about 3 times in the whole book, and he's only ever mentioned to be compared to Creon and point out how inferior Helmer was and how superior Creon is compared to a regular hot guy. For some reason, Creon also has the most expensive pair of shoes FMC has ever worn in her entire life ready for her. Good to know that even in a fantasy fae world, sugar daddy relationships are still important and appreciated. Sure, he abducted me, almost got me killed, made me sleep in his bed, destroyed my whole life, but he gave me Louboutins. Creon only wears black coats, so he dresses like he's from the Matrix, except all the settings are tropical islands, which are probably hot and humid, so this choice makes little sense other than to fit in with his juvenile theme of being a Reaper main. Jokes aside, it's later explained in another chapter that wearing black gives him an arsenal of colors to use for magic. There are many quotes in this chapter that show Emelin's self-loathing, such as, quote, "This puffy sleeve hides my bony arm," end quote. Even though it was just explained she has to sleep in his bed because other Fae might see, she blows a hole in his window using her forbidden magic, which was explained earlier to guarantee she will be tortured or killed if revealed. But apparently she can do this now and many times later in the book with no consequence because she's feeling tsundere, like a teenager who got her phone taken away. Just like in the book Rotten to the Core by Alexi Blake, and probably what happens in Book 2 of From Blood and Ash by Jennifer Armentrout, the abducted FMC finds MMC's homeland so infuriatingly beautiful, even though she wants to hate it, just like she wants to hate him, but finds him so infuriatingly and undeniably beautiful. Just another way in which we see FMC turn out to be all wrong about everything, because the right answer is to always love MMC, and FMC is just too stupid to see that right away. This is followed by a literal mouth-gaping moment where she is entranced and staring at him because he's just so beautiful when he's barefoot and shirtless. Quote, "It took me a moment to realize my mouth had sagged open," end quote. Being seduced by the physical beauty of the MMC's landscape or his physical beauty is a common element in the enemies to lovers tropes. Emelin has to remind herself not to fall so easily for Creon, but everyone loves the body betrays me type of writing, right? There's nothing rapey or non-consensual about this being a core trope in romance. She has like 5 pages straight of an inner monologue about how hot he is before she finally speaks and says, quote, "morning," end quote, to him. This helps to role model inner obsession over a man you just met for young women readers. She asks him how old he is, and he's 368 years old. Move aside, Grandpa Edward Cullen, we have a true gentleman here. She sympathizes with him being born and raised as a killing machine. Even though she still wants to view him as an enemy, she tries to stay strong, but, quote, "The bastard really should have been wearing a shirt, damn it," end quote. Creon is just too sexy, so her willpower means nothing. She demands he train her so she can kill the Fae Mother as soon as possible. Chapter 6, short summary. This chapter is just a training arc. Creon is the most powerful mage of all time, but he is also magically bound to not be able to harm Mother, so he has to train Emelin instead. Emelin is talented but weak, since she has never had a chance to actually practice her magic. Chapter 6, long summary. The wearing all black thing is explained as having access to all colors for magic. On the way to their training ground, Em is impressed again at Creon's flying speed and power, and asks him to warn her next time he grabs her, which he ignores, because F her consent. She swoons over how sexy his body is for several pages, while praising him internally for being so gentle with her. Emelin notes Creon's notebook doesn't contain any conversations prior to hers, so I guess she doesn't have to feel jealous that he is talking or writing notes to other women. Creon schools her by introducing the concept of blending colors and magical effects, something Em feels stupid for never imagining before. Well, it's not like she was forbidden from using magic, and he's had literally over 10 times the amount of lifespan to practice compared to her or anything. Creon has her practice by turning a tree branch to glass, then destroying it. She uses her experience watching her father blend paint colors to turn the branch to glass, but explodes it and cuts herself when destroying it. Creon heals her hand, and Em is forced to admit he is far more skilled than she is, saying he is a master and she could never heal that proficiently. Creon continuously refuses to acknowledge her emotions, often refusing to nod or smile or look at her. This is important because if any MMCs were to show emotional availability, it would obviously be extremely unattractive. Everyone knows men have to be aloof and stoic, or else they're disgusting. Em struggles with the physical proximity to Creon as she finds him too attractive. More training, Creon then challenges Em to turn half of a stone into water. Em gets frustrated with her poor control over magic and tries to make up for her insecurity by bullying Creon about his muteness. She finds out he's been unable to speak for 130 years since the last battle. After making fun of his disability, Em introduces the idea of sign language to him. She realizes he is too proud to learn it willingly, so she appeases his ego by claiming he should learn it for her sake, since she is a weak and impatient human who prefers him to sign instead of write notes. Creon falls for her manipulation and begins using the signs she teaches him. Overall, this chapter showcases their relationship dynamic. Creon is aloof and stoic, while Em pleads for him to open up. Em's frustrations and tsundere personality contrast with Creon's stoicism. Some readers might find their dynamic reads like a daddy-dom/little girl kink, especially with the massive age gap between the two characters. Thankfully, the actual intimacy scenes between the two never takes on an explicit age play dynamic. However, there are a lot of purity culture quotes throughout the book, especially when the tension between them breaks. Side note, being able to magically transmute wood to glass or stone to water is interesting, but transmutation and its possible consequences are never touched upon again in Book 1. It's a tangent, but it would be interesting to hear about how transmutation affects the economy. Are the tributes pointless if Fae can just transmute sand into food or gold? What are the limitations of transmutation within this magical system? I would have liked to know, but the power scaling and Emelin's developing magic are brushed aside to focus on the relationship between Emelin and Creon. Chapter 7 Short Summary. Emelin does more training and secretly enjoys life with Creon, where he cooks for her and the sexual tension between them builds. Creon assaults a Fae male for making gross comments about Emelin. Chapter 7 Long Summary. It's the end of the day and Emelin has been practicing hard, draining the color out of their materials, but still unable to turn half a stone into water. In the first chapter, Emelin explained that magically spent colors come back into clothing within hours unless you completely drain them. Once exhausted, they stay white forever. These training arc chapters could have been a great opportunity to showcase more intricacies of the color-based magic system, but instead we learn more about Em's feelings towards Creon. My dress was a pale periwinkle by the time the sun hung directly above us and drenched my back in sweat. I had reduced one of Creon's shirts to an amusingly sweet pink, and another to a stark white that likely wouldn't recover. Em reflects on the massive skill gap between her and Creon, between her and Mother Fae. There was nothing explosive about his magic, nothing grand and spectacular. He worked his colors like a carving knife, with cold, ruthless precision, turning bits and pieces of stone to dust without even stirring the sand below. His shoulders barely tensed. His face never showed a hint of effort, wielding powers that could hurt and maim and kill like anyone else might wipe a fleck of dust from their clothes. Quote, 366 years of training, and the mother was far, far older than that, end quote. Creon is 368 years old, and he's been training since he was 2 years old. She then gets annoyed and insecure that Creon is not praising or encouraging her, while thinking tsundere thoughts about Creon as he flies them back to his house. Quote, "If I decapitated the mother herself tomorrow, he'd probably nod too, and suggest I use less yellow next time," end quote. Another tsundere/bratty quote, "The thought annoyed me enough to make me step forward without flinching as he moved to scoop me into his arms again. If I could sufficiently remind myself of how much I hated him, his Fae magic should have a hard time getting hold of me," end quote. She is building up both annoyance and willpower to resist his charms, until he takes off his shirt again. Then her brain melts. Quote, "On the other side of the room, Creon was taking off his shirt. Oh, Zara, help me. I didn't need another demonstration of corded muscle and gleaming skin, not after all the effort I'd made to keep my head clear this afternoon," end quote. Her brain resumes function when he puts a shirt back on. Another side note, she ascribes some of his charm to Fae magic, but to clarify, there's no magic involved in her attraction to him. That's just something that she tries to blame as part of the purity culture vibe throughout the book. When she has to play the silly little human in front of other Fae as a way to make any kind of sexual agency, or when she has to say that he must be using magic for her to be so attracted to him, because otherwise that would be an indictment of her purity. Another side note and spoiler, confusingly, there is a subplot later about whether or not Creon actually used demon magic, not Fae magic, to manipulate her feelings towards him. That subplot is different and not related to her comments about being physically attracted to Creon. As Emelin eats from a basket of the world's most ethically sourced food, she starts having insecure thoughts about her own body again. She has described herself multiple times as bony and now gaunt, as she blushes under his gaze. By contrast, she describes Creon as majestic and immortal elegance, making it clear she loathes herself and worships him. Quote, "He raised an eyebrow as he glanced over his shoulder, running his gaze over my gaunt figure a little too demonstratively. A blush stormed my cheeks," end quote. In this next scene, a rival Fae male named Ophion visits Creon's house unexpectedly. He makes rapey comments about Emelin until Creon attacks him. This scene serves to establish Ophion as a villain, Creon as a protector of Emelin, and also to indict Fae males in general as being cruel and rapey. In front of Ophion, Em puts on her silly little Fae groupie plaything persona. Quote, "But I was a silly, swoony human, obsessed with my Fae hosts and Fae in general. I didn't make snarky comments. I didn't even think of them," end quote. M makes a show out of acting extremely submissive, and Ophion makes an unsubtle jab about M being Creon's sex slave, alluding to her performing oral sex on Creon. Ophion keeps making crude comments and disrespecting M until Creon attacks him. Creon cuts off Ophion's hand and damages Ophion's wings. Ophion scurries away while apologizing. After Creon asserts himself as M's protector, he explains Ophion is Mother's lover. M insults the now-gone Ophion and wins a brief smile from Creon, which he tries to hide, because wringing emotions out of a man should be as difficult as trying to make half a stone turn into water. Creon reassures M that Ophion will just heal himself, and that there won't be any trouble for assaulting him. Spoiler, it turns out there will be a lot of trouble later as a result of assaulting Ophion. In romance books, why is there often a scene where MMC protects FMC from some creepy guy? On the surface, it seems like a heroic act, but often the MMC uses gratuitous, excessive violence to show dominance over the other guy. If you think critically about it, why include this type of scene in so many romance books? Is it really just a dramatic way to prove that MMC is dangerous to others but safe to FMC? It equates violence with caring and reinforces male ownership of his possession, the FMC. There's something sinister about a culture that yearns for excuses to violence. It has a similar feel to when pro-gun people fantasize about someone breaking into their home so they have an excuse to shoot someone. Creon has spent much of the training arcs ignoring or being minimally available with Emelin, but we're supposed to swoon when he explodes with an excuse for violence, as if that makes up for all of his previous unreliability. There is a Fae festival of light, but Creon decides not to go, while also insinuating that he could be having sex with M at the festival while others watch. M tries not to faint in excitement. That's not a joke, that's literally what she's thinking in the book. Quote, "I quite felt like getting the vapors, but I'd be damned if I let him notice, end quote. They make up a mutual cover story about why they're not appearing at the festival. Then M senses a change in Creon. He cooks for her, and she illustrates sign language flashcards for him to study. Together, in silence, they eat by his window and watch the festival lanterns float off into the air, and listen to the moving music. They share a sense of camaraderie over having worked together to reject Ophion, and their shared magical ancestry. M now views Creon in a new light, thinking he isn't as vicious as the legends say. She praises him internally for not raping her, for setting up a protective pact, for feeding her, and for fighting off Ophion. M asks if Creon really killed all those humans, and even though Creon confirms he did, she resolves to treat him more like a human rather than a cold-blooded killer. She plots to treat him with empathy, and do a bunch of emotional labor to get him to open up. Then she spends the rest of the chapter fantasizing about him bedding her, while cursing her own thoughts, because kya, it's been 5 whole minutes since she acted tsundere. Chapter 8 Short Summary. Em and Creon have their first fight. She's mad that he's been missing most days for a week, and he's mad that she's not training hard enough. He explains more lore about the war between human and fae, and past crimes by Mother and the gods themselves. M decides to defy Creon by running away to a dangerous beach area. The Silent Death is mysteriously aloof and missing for most of the next few days, while M trains. She is thankful he is gone most of the time, because that way she won't throw herself into his arms. Quote, in a way, it was a blessing. If he wasn't around, at least I couldn't accidentally throw myself into his arms when his fae magic became too overwhelming, end quote. When he does briefly appear, she tries to ask him how his day was, or whether he was at the court, but he refuses to answer, because F-boys never tell the truth about where they are. He ain't gonna turn on location sharing for her anytime soon. He leaves exercises for her to practice, like cutting a circle out of a stone, and M gets increasingly frustrated with his lack of praise, encouragement, and his lack of answers to her questions. She even asks him to show her around the island, but he warns her not to go past the Feywood and says she can go explore by herself, refusing her invitation. After a week of this aloof treatment, M gives up on practicing to defy Creon and get his attention. He comes back at lunchtime and notices she isn't practicing. M is very happy that Senpai finally noticed her, and is thrilled when Creon makes her a cup of tea at her request. She praises him for not hitting her, even though he could have if he wanted to, quote, as if it took an effort not to slap me in the face, end quote. Another quote, but he only snatched one of yesterday's leftover stones off the floor and didn't even throw it into my face. Instead, it landed in the velvet just beside my lap, close enough to make the point that he could have hit me had he wanted to, end quote. With Creon watching, M tries to split a stone into 4 pieces, but instead violently shatters it, destroying parts of Creon's house again. I guess the line where M has to sleep in Creon's bed because some fae might walk by, like Ophion, doesn't matter when she's practicing her forbidden magic and exploding the house. Creon tells M her magic is especially powerful, and that half fae inherit the full power of their fae ancestor, whereas full fae only average their parents' power level. This implies that M's fae ancestor was or is a powerful mage. But before the reader gets excited about the power imbalance between M and Creon being restored, Creon casually explains that he is the most powerful mage in recorded history, which spans about 3,000 to 4,000 years. And bonus points, when it comes to breeding, he isn't racist against humans like most fae are. The biggest reveal of all is that Creon's biological mother is also the fae mother, which means you can check off Prince on your MMC bingo card, along with tall, aloof, grabs FMC without her consent, has a well-furnished house, and overwhelmingly powerful. Creon then tries to explain the history of the wars to M, but all she can think about is how good he smells and how sculpted his shoulders are. His key point is that Mother is actually 2 sister souls inhabiting one body, for the purpose of combining their magic power. M is shocked to learn that there are different magic types besides color magic, including magic of the gods. Mother is basically an abomination because she uses magic from all the different domains, including god magic, when she is only supposed to have access to fae color magic. Korok, a god who is in love with Mother, taught her and helped build her domains of conquest. Humans got mad that Korok abandoned them to pursue Mother, so they killed her son. Then Mother blighted the humans, starting a war with the gods and killing Korok. She is the reason the mainland is plagued and uninhabitable, and why all humans are forced to live on islands. Mother is the combination of two sisters. The god Korok put them in the same body so he can always have sex with one or the other without her being asleep. M blushes. But it doesn't make sense, since if you have two incestuous lesbian partners, one would always be awake anyways? Anyways, it's clear the book is saying that non-monogamous incestuous lesbians are the source of all evil. The thing about half Fae being stronger doesn't really make sense. If full Fae end up average, then how do you have some stronger or weaker Fae? Almost everyone would quickly converge towards an average unless you introduce a significant supply of half Fae into the gene pool to deviate from that average. Maybe it's a reference to the hybrid vigor theory from biology. Mother killed Creon's father because she only wanted his seed to make Creon, and Creon cannot kill her because she never sleeps and she can use magic, but he cannot use magic against her. M questions how she can train to kill someone as powerful as Mother, and Creon suspects a large part of her power stems from her throne, which she always protects like a vulnerability. His plan is to chart the forbidden labyrinth below her throne in order to attack the throne itself, because that's probably her weakness. M gets mad that he didn't explain any of this before, and in her angry ranting she asks if he'd like to bed her. He then draws all the color from the room, threatening to kill her, and her response is to internally monologue about how sexy and powerful he is, how perfect the lines of his face are. With more saucy insults, she leaves to go explore the beach by herself, while Creon shatters his own home in rage. Chapter 9 Short Summary. M runs away to the Feywood by the beach and meets some unexpected allies, a magical phoenix girl named Lyn who can keep being reborn after each death, and another magical being named Tarid who can teleport himself and anyone he is touching. They discuss Creon's trustworthiness and some more lore about what happened with him in the last war. Chapter 9 Long Summary. M walks alone on the beach, frustrated that Creon won't open up more to her, and she considers giving up on the mission to kill Mother. She speculates about Creon's motivations to kill his mother, and wonders whether Creon will kill M once Mother is dead, since he has killed humans for centuries. M realizes she is completely at his mercy, since if she gives up on killing Mother, Creon is no longer bound to keep her safe. Lost in thought, she wanders past the Feywood just like she was told not to. She gets jumped by a horse-sized zombie dog. Without enough color to defend herself, she begins talking to the zombie dog, saying that Creon will protect her. Why not take some color with you before you go wandering around? Creon should have provided clothing that has weaponizable colors in it, like putting black handkerchiefs into the pockets, especially after the Ophion near rape attack. M is saved from the giant zombie hound by a 6 or 7-year-old looking human girl named Lyn. The Lyn girl seems to know Creon and offers to help M, but M doesn't entirely trust her, especially since Lyn doesn't act like a little girl. Lyn leads M to her place in the woods, where she lives with Tarid, a tall blonde man who also looks human but acts inhuman. They chat and Tarid reveals he is an elf and Lyn is a phoenix. Lyn is on her 17th life cycle and Tarid is about 500 years old. M is wary of Lyn's bargain, but she wasn't wary of Creon's bargain to keep her safe. M reveals to Tarid and Lyn that Cathra's residents actually survived, and they're in disbelief to hear that Creon spared Cathra because it contradicts the official story that he annihilated the entire island. Tarid and Lyn were at the last battle with Creon, and they admit Creon changed his mind, but their conclusion is that Creon went right back to killing and skinning humans alive at Mother's command, so he must not have really changed. M tells Creon's plans to betray Mother, and they offer to help M escape. But she declines because she wants to help humanity win against the Fae. She does not reveal her Fae ancestry. There are other allies hiding in the forest, but M doesn't want to meet them yet. They all agree to keep each other's secrets, and then Tarid teleports her back to safety using Alf magic. He's basically Nightcrawler from the X-Men. He even says bad things can happen if he is too hungry and only teleports someone halfway, and that people can get stuck in things. Chapter 10. The first half is summary of M performing sexuality in this chapter, and the second half is analysis of how this exemplifies rape culture. Short summary. M returns to Creon's house, but they're summoned to lunch with Mother. In front of Mother, M must act like Creon's happy sex slave to convince Mother, and their performance develops real sexual tension between M and Creon. Long summary. M walks back to Creon's house, where she sees him with a Fae female. M tries to act ditzy on purpose, but also notices how gorgeous the Fae woman is. The Fae woman acts like M isn't hot enough for Creon. The woman is a messenger who says Mother wants to have lunch with M. When Creon grabs M's wrist to warn her not to reveal their plans, Em gets super horny and spends a page of internal monologue saying how much she wants Creon, and how his touch is like a sinful, demanding brand and siren song. They have to act like lovers in front of the Fae woman, which makes Em crazy horny when Creon casually touches her. She gets horny not through any deliberate choice, but because she is forced to perform closeness with Creon. When she flirts, touches, or whispers, it's framed as a survival tactic, an act to fool Mother rather than her own sexual initiative. On the flight to Mother, Em apologizes to Creon for her outburst. Em decides she has to act like she's in love with Creon to survive the lunch with Mother, to act like his happy sex slave. It lets the book build intimacy and sexual tension without the heroine ever openly deciding, I want him and I'm going to act on it. Emelin is taken before Mother, and she has an epiphany about how miserable Creon's relationship with Mother must be, and feels sorry for Creon because he has an unloving mom. To continue their act, Creon puts Em on his lap, and Em has to remind herself not to act like a shocked virgin, while also being mad at Creon for taking advantage of the situation. Em is convinced this whole setup is a test, and that she has to convince Mother she is Creon's happy sex slave or die. This contrived scene gives Em all the excuses she needs to be very flirty and seductive towards Creon, touching him and whispering in his ear, making him shiver. She is proud she is finally sexually affecting him. Mother reveals that she had Cathra investigated to confirm it was burnt down. They question how Em survived. Em has to make up a story on the spot about helping Creon breach the ward, and how she wanted him to murder the whole village because of the way they mistreated her. Mother, Ophion, and Thysandra seem to buy her story and lose interest in her, dismissing her from the lunch after Em says she is tired because Creon hasn't let her sleep that much, wink wink. The chapter ends with Creon flying Em away, and she says he cradles her like he would fight off an army of monsters to keep her safe, even though he couldn't protect her from being theatrically molested in public a moment ago, or from the zombie hound on the beach. For the second half of this video, I want to share analysis on why this performance setup is problematic. Romantasy often forces heroines into situations where they must act in love or act sexually attracted to the MMC, and this contrivance gives them permission to express desire safely. In other words, desire has to be deniable, plausible deniability. If she's caught flirting, she can say, "It was just to trick Mother. It was just part of the cover." This creates a pattern where the FMC's desire can never stand on its own as a valid moral choice. It must be excused by circumstance. Purity culture, whether explicitly religious or more broadly cultural, frames women's sexual desire as dangerous or immoral. Unless it's reactive, such as he touched her first, it's coerced by circumstance, pretending for survival, or it's justified by a formalized romance. She's in love, so it's pure. However, if FMC wanted MMC directly, outside of these conditions, that would make her easy, immoral, or too powerful in the sexual dynamic. Instead, she has to be put in a situation where desire looks accidental or reluctant, so the reader can enjoy the build-up without condemning her. This aligns with traditional gender roles. Men are active agents of desire, women are supposed to be passive reactors. Even when M is performing seduction, she isn't allowed to own the seduction as her idea. She's framed as manipulated by circumstance. It reinforces the idea that women cannot own their desire without shame. Female sexual agency must be filtered through pretense, manipulation, or accident. Desire is only legitimate when it's deniable. For readers, this sets a low ceiling for female characters. Their growth arc is often about learning to admit they love him, rather than choosing to want him, hence her tsundere personality. It also replicates cultural anxieties that punish women for being direct about sex. And yes, it's fair to say the logic is rooted in Christian-influenced purity culture, which has historically shaped Western romance tropes, such as the virgin bride or good girls as opposed to sluts, the idea that female sexuality must be contained or else it corrupts. Even though the book is secular, it inherits the narrative scaffolding. Chapter 10 is a perfect example that illustrates how romantasy often relies on contrived scenarios where women can only act attracted under the veil of necessity. It's not lazy plotting, it's a structural echo of purity culture and gender policing. The performance keeps the heroine's sexuality safe from moral judgment, but also robs her of agency. When a romantasy FMC is only allowed to express desire under coercive circumstances, such as forced proximity, survival roleplay, manipulation by authority, it normalizes the idea that women don't or can't say yes outright. Instead, attraction is portrayed to only happen when she's pressured, cornered, or pretending. This framing reflects rape culture because it erases enthusiastic consent and replaces it with coerced participation. It teaches that female desire is something that must be extracted or manufactured under pressure, not something freely chosen. It reinforces the stereotype that women don't really want sex, so men must create situations to unlock it. In other words, these tropes blur the line between performance under duress and genuine desire, which is the same logic rape culture uses to excuse coercion as romance. Chapter 11. In this chapter, Emelin comes so close to holding Creon accountable for being aloof and unavailable, but then gives up because he's attractive and she feels sorry for him. Short summary, Em and Creon have another fight about him being aloof most of the time. Em runs away to the beach again. The fight resolves with Em feeling sorry for Creon and their discussion of using the labyrinth below the palace as a point of attack. Long summary. Back at Creon's house, Em gets mad when Creon drops her off and starts leaving again. She feels repeatedly abandoned and upset, so she throws a deadly spell at him and has another outburst, angrily accusing him of not caring about her and not including her in any important decision-making. Creon just acts tired and uncaring, but Em refuses to back down, so he finally scribbles, "I'm sorry," just when it seems Em is finally going to hold Creon accountable for his emotional unavailability and aloofness. Creon reveals he has a note written by Em's father. Em's father wrote a short note on behalf of both parents that basically says they don't care about Em and wish to never see her again, that they've done their duty by housing her for 20 years and want to be left alone in peace, and that her seeking them out will only bring trouble they don't want. It turns out Creon had been holding on to this note the entire time, only dropping it at this moment to derail Em trying to hold him accountable. Creon claims withholding the note was to protect her and that he hopes her parents will change their mind. How did Em's father even write a letter to Creon? Does the Silent Death have a P.O. box for hate mail? Why do Em's parents think the Foundling's curse suddenly doesn't apply to them anymore? Could they have just ditched her a long time ago? Devastated by the news, Em's reaction is to be grateful for Creon's comforting touches, but then to explode in anger and destroy his house and run away. Again, we were told earlier that she has to sleep in his bed because other Fae walk by, but she repeatedly uses her forbidden Fae-only magic to explode his house, and that's somehow not a problem. Even though Creon flies at super speed and clearly has no problems non-consensually grabbing Em, he doesn't seem to pursue her immediately. I guess he's just being really polite again and giving her space to be mad at him. Along the beach, Em runs away to some non-Fae woman's barn. The woman recognizes Em and calls her a Fae WH word and a stupid C word before threatening to call the Fae on Em. Finally, Creon shows up and non-consensually grabs Em while she screams, "Let me go," and tries to fight him off. Like a child, her tantrum disappears as soon as Creon tells her to sit with authority. Em suddenly believes none of this is Creon's fault, and that he should not be blamed for how her parents act. She even thinks Creon is the real victim here since he lost his voice. Obviously, losing your voice is way worse than losing your home, all your belongings, everyone you've ever known, and having your family disown you. Em is completely shook by Creon revealing he's been practicing sign language, which benefits him, but it's framed as him learning it for Emelin's sake. Em is really impressed and takes it as evidence that Creon really cares about her. Em apologizes to Creon since she was clearly in the wrong this entire time. She's super happy that he shows he's been practicing some of the signs she taught him. They have a calm talk where Em asks why Creon has been avoiding her all week. He says he was being polite and thought she didn't want him around. Em immediately forgives him and feels sorry for him, and then immediately starts glazing him as much as possible. Quote, "Born as a prince, trained as a murderer, strongest phage in faekind's history, breathtakingly beautiful, unfathomably powerful. Even among his own kind, he had to be half a god by the most modest of standards. A male to look up to, a male to fear, but never a male you took for a beer after dinner, never a male you told to go F himself, indeed." She has to teach him how to communicate. She says, "Don't just go flying off, listen to me." Em then humanizes him as much as possible, completely forgetting he has skinned people alive and tortured and killed them for over a century. All of that is okay because now he wants to betray Mother for reasons he won't explain and Em cannot guess. Then Em starts swooning about how sexy and beautiful Creon is for a few pages. Finally, she focuses and asks to come with Creon while he explores the labyrinth. Em reasons with Creon, saying, "If you keep me safe by keeping me ignorant, you make me feel vulnerable and weak and altogether pathetic, and not particularly safe either." It's hard to feel safe when I know there's danger somewhere but not where to expect it. This is a great point. Ignorance is not necessarily bliss, and keeping her ignorant doesn't actually keep her safe. It's making her anxious and vulnerable. M wants to be included on a trip to the labyrinth. Creon refuses, saying M will be killed if Mother finds out, so it's better if only he breaks the rules by going to the labyrinth. M correctly points out that Mother is likely to kill M anyways if Creon is caught. But she gives up on trying to argue with him and sheepishly asks to go home, surprising herself that she already thinks of Creon's house as home. Analysis. Creon continues to follow his gender script of masculinity. Strength equals stoicism. Emotional openness equals weakness. M tries to hold him accountable for disappearing and not explaining, but questioning him too much makes her seem like she doesn't appreciate his sacrifice. This is why she feels strangely guilty. Every time they fight, it goes from her having a reasonable concern, such as, "Why did you disappear for weeks with no explanation?" flipped into, "I am so sorry for doubting you." The power imbalance and gaslighting potential are so strong here. M, trapped at his house and ignorant of what's going on, while potential rapists and murderers drop by unexpectedly, has to apologize for not appreciating Creon enough. Is keeping someone ignorant really keeping them safe, or just vulnerable? M is not a child, she's an adult, and she's supposed to play a critical role in assassinating Mother. Safety requires informed agency, yet Creon treats her like a child. Correspondingly, M throws tantrums like a child since she is treated like one. This is control masquerading as care. Creon claims that his secrecy is protection, justifying him withholding power and information. But real care would involve transparency, building skills, and fostering resilience, not infantilizing someone. Remember, he doesn't even properly train her magic, he just leaves her with some Kumon homework tasks and disappears with no explanation. The theme of psychological disempowerment continues. Emelin falls into a more dependent state where she must trust his version of reality. When she seeks help from the woman on the beach, she is rejected. Isolated and vulnerable, Emelin is easy to manipulate, and whenever she dares to question any of this, she is framed as ungrateful, disloyal, or irrational. It's disturbing. The first half of this video is a summary of Chapter 12 of A Court of Blood and Bindings. The second half is analysis. M wakes up wrapped around Creon's body, because remember, she has to sleep next to him for appearances, except appearances don't seem to matter when she blows up his house with forbidden magic no human is allowed to have every other day. She thinks about how good he feels, his quote, sweet and nutty and dangerously ... masculine scent, end quote. What is she, a squirrel? Then she has insecure thoughts about her parents' letter, the woman who called her a Fae WH word, and shoves herself out of bed. Throughout the chapter, she struggles with feeling attracted to Creon versus feeling like a WH word. M makes breakfast while wishing she could put Creon in her mouth instead. Barely stopping herself from shouting out that she wants Creon, they finish breakfast and he brings her some Fae history books for her to study. M needs help understanding them, but she doesn't want to admit she needs help to Creon because she is tsundere. She thinks Creon is a bastard for smirking at her because she is too proud to admit she needs help. She quickly gives up on learning more about the last battle and looks up Creon's name in the dictionary. Creon Hytherion, Prince. His entry depicts him gloriously massacring 45 humans, standing majestically over a pile of corpses. M begins debating whether Creon is really good, because he drives knives into children's eyes, skins people alive, but he is also really tall and hot. Quote, and yet I have no idea what to think of the heart beating inside that painfully muscular chest of yours. M asks Creon about other entries, and he explains demons are older than gods, and feed off people's torment and negative emotions. Lysandra, the cruel fae from the lunch scene earlier, has an entry about being a demon killer. Creon hypes her up as a formidable warrior, but Lysandra's secret is that she has been pining for 130 years over a demon named Anaxia that she didn't kill during the last battle. Creon reveals Mother trained Creon with demons when he was younger, stirring M's sympathy for him. They continue studying. M gets frustrated trying to learn Fae grammar and gives up while Creon teases her. She suggests they look at the labyrinth tomorrow. Creon agrees without much complaint. M sleeps next to Creon again, briefly worrying she will embarrass herself by waking up wrapped around him again. They go to one of the labyrinth entrances through the Faewood, and Creon says he is too alpha so the hounds won't attack him. There's a mundane rocky wall near the base of the mountain under the court, magically disguised to look ordinary. Creon pulls it open to reveal a magical, beautiful crystal tunnel entrance. A random Fae male guard appears to chase them around, which is the excuse they need to pretend to be lovers and kiss. In romance stories, women can never take agency without being called a WH word or SLUT, so we need contrived setups like this for anything to happen. Creon shivers with excitement while they make out. The male guard sees them passionately making out and apologizes, saying he thought they were trying to sneak in the labyrinth, but now he can see that's clearly not the case. Creon throws knives at him until he flees in terror. They walk back home in silence because every drop of emotional availability has to be squeezed out of Creon like blood from a stone. And I guess the lesson here is that she can only get reactions through providing sexual access to her body. The chapter ends with M desperately wanting more of Creon. Analysis. Once again, we have the tired trope of physical intimacy as a cover story. Throughout the chapter, Emelin is conflicted between expressing her attraction to Creon versus feeling like a WH word or indecent woman. This is the shame-desire binary. If Emelin openly communicates her attraction to Creon, she will be slut-shamed, so the author contrives to frame her desire as something that only slips out under duress, not her own choice. The guard is coming. He will catch us exploring the forbidden labyrinth. Quick, let's distract him by making out.
Kiss me.
What?
Public displays of affection make people very uncomfortable.
Yes, they do.
Instead of Creon shoving himself onto Emelin as the guard arrives, imagine if the author had written in a confession by Emelin where she openly admits to being attracted to Creon, and then they have some flirty banter in the labyrinth and she initiates the kiss with Creon. The guard can still discover them making out and excuse their labyrinth exploration. The scene would be the same for the purpose of the plot, except Emelin's consent would actually matter. She wouldn't just be a prop to show how clever and quick Creon is for suddenly grabbing her and forcing a kiss on her. These tropes teach readers that it's exciting and romantic when a woman is suddenly kissed to avoid danger, when in reality it treats her boundaries as secondary to male initiative. It reinforces the message to men that women secretly want to be sexually assaulted or raped, they just can't say so without looking like a slut. It also opens up an interesting discussion about why some men can only be attracted to women when they're objectified, the Madonna whore complex. Either she's a good person and they can't see her sexually, or she's a whore that is sexually attractive but cannot be respected and loved. It's attraction under objectification. Misogynistic men only feel powerful when they objectify women before being attracted to them. This perpetuates a cultural myth that women who are openly sexual are tainted and of lesser value. Chapter 13 of Court of Blood and Bindings is filled with purity culture baggage. Quote, "Did it mean I was his little Fae whore after all? Could I shrug off a violent past for a few hours of rolling around in the hay?" Instead of simply wanting Creon because she's attracted to him, she tries to repress her sexual desire, worrying that she will appear indecent, reckless, or morally weak. Em and Creon continue to develop feelings after their kiss, and they study the labyrinth to fulfill their mission of assassinating Mother. They are summoned to a celebration at Mother's request. Em is horny and having flashbacks and analyzing the kiss with Creon. Quote, "Did it mean I liked him? Did it mean I was his little Fae whore after all? Did it mean I was the kind of woman who could shrug off a violent past and a deadly disregard for human lives in exchange for a few hours of rolling around in the hay? Did he want me to be that woman?" End quote. She tries to quench her horny by looking up his dictionary entry again to remind herself that he is a mass murderer and torturer, but after reflecting on how many people he has hurt, she gets overwhelmed thinking about how hot he is and seeks him out on the beach. Creon apologizes for forcing a kiss on her, but Em insists it's okay and they have some flirty banter and she giggles. Em alludes to Creon penetrating her, but they eventually stop flirting and decide to get back to work. Creon teases her a bit more about her difficulties learning the Fae language. And here we have the biggest purity culture quote in the book so far. "What could I say? I want you. I want you to read it from my thoughts and sweep me off my feet and kiss me again so I can at least blame you for my temporary loss of sanity, so I can feel you all over me, inside me too, and still be a decent person. I want you to make up my mind for me. I just don't want to doubt anymore." I swallowed and muttered, "I don't want to make things complicated." What is the complication? You are. This passage is so bad because Emelin explicitly outsources her agency to Creon. She wants him to initiate so she can keep her image intact. She craves plausible deniability, so I can at least blame you, which is a classic purity culture mechanism. Women must not be seen as choosing sex. Her desire is only safe if it comes under the cover of male dominance. Notice how she frames her horniness as temporary loss of sanity. She says she doesn't want to doubt anymore, which makes Creon's decisiveness erotic. His ability to override her uncertainty is attractive. Her doubt and indecision are virtue signals to the reader, designed to make her seem morally good for resisting temptation. This ties into a wider romantasy trend. Female desire is framed as too dangerous or shameful unless mediated by male control, which is what makes being swept away so common in the genre. Unfortunately, it's also what supports rape culture. In real life, there's no way for a man to accurately know whether a woman secretly wants it or not. Encouraging people to play a game where the woman pretends to resist and the man pretends to know she secretly wants it is exactly how the lines of consent are blurred. Sure, in a fantasy romance book, we can know via omniscient narrator and hearing their thoughts that she does in fact secretly want and love it, but in real life this is no different than the thought process of a rapist or unwanted sexual advance. In a mini time skip, they studied the labyrinth for 4 days before returning to it. The labyrinth has a history of making Fae disappear, and eventually it was closed by Mother because it was unsafe for Fae. This plot point makes no sense because 1. The Mother doesn't care if random people or Fae die. She wouldn't close off an area for safety. If the throne was really her weak point, she would not allow people to run around underneath it at any point in time. The narrative claims she let people run around the labyrinth until it proved too much of a safety hazard. Another messenger Fae interrupts their training, and Emelin is nearly caught doing Fae magic. The messenger says Creon and Em are required to attend a celebration for some other Fae's successful mission quelling a human rebellion. Creon hints that the celebration will be orgiastic. Em worries about what dress she will wear, deciding to do her own alterations. This prompts Creon to ask about her seamstress skills and past, where Em mentions her failed apprenticeship due to her powers going out of control. The scene ends with Creon validating Em and criticizing her father for not helping her develop her powers. Quote, "Because they made you feel small," a pause, "and there is nothing small about you," end quote. Em is comforted by his validation and says, "Creon, ... When Em is validated by Creon while criticizing her father for his lack of approval, it shows a transfer of male validation from her father to Creon. Her insecurity is rooted in her poor relationship with her father, her failed apprenticeship, and within the confines of her gender role. It's supposed to be an uplifting scene where Creon gives her the validation she has long been missing, but it reinforces the idea that validation can only come from male approval. Creon criticizes her father, validates her worth, and replaces her father as the new authoritative male in her life. Similar to how a father walks the bride down the aisle, transferring her to the groom. Where Emelin was unable to earn praise from her father, she is finally able to earn it from Creon, mostly through providing sexual access to her body, and she finds his praise intoxicating. This scene probably hits an emotional beat with readers who grew up in an authoritarian household or who had difficulties receiving praise and encouragement from their fathers. But it doesn't truly work to resolve Emelin's insecurity, it just serves to transfer ownership from her father to Creon. Chapter 14, A Court of Blood and Bindings. In this chapter, Em and Creon escalate their relationship by having sex at the orgiastic celebration. This chapter is the culmination of the shame-desire binary. Buckle up, because this chapter summary and analysis is going to be long and hard in more ways than one. First, Em receives some dresses from Creon via Fae Delivery Girl. Each of the 4 ball gowns are worth twice Cathra's yearly tribute. The Fae are absurdly wealthy, while the humans who give almost everything via tribute taxes are in poverty. Sounds like trickle-down economics to me. Em wonders how rich Prince Creon Hytherion is. Em notes how modest the dresses are. Quote, "As if he didn't trust me in a dress that showed more than my ankles, M-. As if he didn't dare to trust himself with the sight of more than my ankles," end quote. Creon, Fae Prince, but also traditional Muslim. She fantasizes that she'll be forced to do more sexual theatrics and decides to modify the dresses to be a little more revealing. You might think that her initiative to alter the dresses shows her active agency, but here is how it is framed. Quote, "Not that I wanted him to lose control of himself, of course. That would be ridiculous, ... But if he were to get a tiny bit carried away while pretending I was his little human pet, at least it would be better if he got pleasantly carried away. Wouldn't it?" End quote. She is basically rape baiting Creon, hoping that he loses control and forces her into sex. Why? So that she can maintain her purity and goodness by avoiding being the active agent, avoiding enthusiastic consent. She wants to perform her role of feminine passivity by enabling him to perform his role of male aggression and dominance. Unfortunately, if that disgusts you, the depiction of violence as courtship continues throughout the chapter. Continuing the chapter, Em also feels slightly more confident about her body now, saying that she didn't have hips before, but she has more now that she is getting 3 large meals a day, a reference to her earlier abuse where her parents would deprive her of food. Em's newfound hips and fuller body are a result of Creon feeding her, in contrast to her parents' abuse. He is the superior patriarch and provider. Creon flirts by threatening to kill anyone who looks at Em. Quote, "Might have to kill a few people for looking at you the wrong way tonight." I snorted a laugh. Is that a compliment? Nobody risks my wrath for anyone looking less than gorgeous, end quote. His violent protectiveness is cast as attractive, but from a feminist perspective, it replays the trope that women's safety and worth are guaranteed only by male dominance. Remember when Creon fought off Ophion for making rapey comments? Or when she has to sit on his lap during Mother's lunch interrogation? Or when they're caught in the labyrinth by a guard and Creon forces a kiss on her before throwing knives at the guard to shoo him away? All of these are instances where Creon's violence and dominance seem to enable Emelin's sexuality, but actually confine her within his control. They flirt some more, and Creon taunts Em to take the sexual initiative with him at the celebration tonight. Creon's line, "I'm not doing anything to you that you're not doing to me. You show me your limits." Again that smile, or the lack of them, end quote. It seems to be a game that relies on Emelin's consent, but it is completely undermined. The rules are his. He defines the game. Creon is a centuries-old Fae prince, wealthy, violent, and in control of her environment. Emelin is a human with little real power. They're surrounded by a court full of Fae who are looking for any excuse to rape and torture Emelin. If Emelin were to disagree with Creon in front of the other Fae, what do you think would happen? It's almost hilarious that the author contrived this consent game as a way to empower Emelin when all it does is reinforce Creon's control over her sexuality. At the orgiastic Fae party, they banter about who will lose control first. Strangely, there was no talk between Creon and Em about how dangerous this could be for them, which reinforces the idea that these scenes are all contrivances to let Em be sexual with Creon without violating her gender role passivity. The reader is forced to admit that Emelin's survival is more important than her sexual purity, by rooting for her performance as his little Fae whore in front of the other Fae. The queen/mother immediately notices them, and they feel threatened. A random Fae male approaches Em, saying he will take a turn with her after Creon is bored of her. Creon instantly kills him on the spot, causing the whole party to come to a halt. After he silently threatens everyone, they all go back to partying. Add this very public murder to the long list of instances where Creon's extreme violence is equated with caring about Em. Em and Creon now decide to start discussing possible ways to attack her, hiding their sign gestures between their bodies, but Creon says all of Em's suggestions are too risky. There's no explanation as to why Creon is allowed to murder a Fae to protect his human, but lots of convenient author reasoning about why Emelin can't possibly attack the queen during this party. They start discussing the last time Creon had sex, which he says was over 130 years ago at the last battle. They mirror each other's movements, with Em tsundere grabbing Creon and Creon caressing her back in the same spots. Whichever body parts she touches, he touches on her. But when Em tries to probe deeper about how Creon could find her so fascinating when he could have his pick of women, he escalates the game, bending the rules, asserting his dominance. Quote, "A mistake. I could read it in the dangerous gleam in his eyes as he slowly, suggestively trailed his hand around my waist, M-, imitating the way I'd wrapped my arm around his torso a moment ago. But I surely hadn't held him like this," end quote. Em gets a big reaction out of Creon by touching his wings to win the touch mirror game. They completely forget about any attempts to assassinate Mother and full-on start petting each other in public. We get to hear about the bulge of Creon's erection against M's stomach, and Creon grabbing her chest and thumb-circling certain parts of it. They keep escalating and get one step away from having sex in the room with Mother watching. Creon takes her to a side room where 3 other Fae are doing similar adult things and then starts fingering M, even though she wants to go back to the privacy of his pavilion. He edges her, making her beg for more, and she is forced to sacrifice her dignity for a chance at release. M, will we just be proving points for the rest of the night? Creon, only 1 point. M, that I'm a little Fae whore after all? Creon, that you should want more. M, I want you. I want you so much I could die from it. And I can't stop wanting you, end quote. Emelin says that right before Creon penetrates her. And this scene is intended to be a big turning point in consent. It's supposed to prove that Emelin is giving enthusiastic consent. Emelin is the one who escalates. She claws at his trousers, pulls him closer, and initiates direct physical contact. Her verbal cues are affirmative and explicit. Quote, I want you, I can't stop wanting you, I'm thinking about effing you, end quote. She even frames her desire as overwhelming, unstoppable, not coerced but self-driven. But she also says, quote, that I'm a little Fae whore after all? She had been right, the girl in the stables. I was going to squander every last bit of my morals for a taste of him, and I didn't even care, end quote. So her desire is still coded as transgression, immoral. When she says, quote, I can't stop wanting you, and my voice broke, I try to stop, and then I find myself thinking about kissing you again, find myself thinking about effing you, as if I hadn't been told to stay away from you all my life, end quote. It's coded like a harmful addiction or compulsion, not deliberate consent. Meanwhile, Creon holds the upper hand, watching silently. Quote, he watched me, taut as a bowstring about to be released, end quote. The scene keeps escalating, and Creon penetrates her while they continue their banter about her being good and innocent, and Creon being bad and monstrous. Throughout the book, Creon repeats this line several times. Quote, does it make me innocent, wanting you, end quote? And Emelin will often respond with, quote, I wanted him, monster or not, I wanted him, end quote. Many reviewers picked up on these lines. It seems like a weird exchange they keep having about Creon asking if she can purify him, as opposed to her asking if he can corrupt her. It's a classic patriarchal trope. The fallen man doesn't heal himself, but instead seeks salvation through the love of a good woman. Creon wants to be purified. Emelin wants to be corrupted. She offers innocence to heal him, but loses her innocence in the process. It dramatizes a fantasy where female sexuality is only legitimate if it is self-sacrificial. It's weird and problematic because he can't just want sex or love, he must frame it as her redeeming him. She can't just want sex or love, she must frame it as him corrupting her. Ultimately, this keeps them both trapped in shame. His in self-hatred, hers in sexual repression. It's no coincidence that the sexual climax of the book is centered on them being trapped in shame. I feel bad for the author who had to write this chapter as a culmination of empowerment. She probably thought that the consent game empowered Emelin, and Emelin explicitly consenting would subvert all the patriarchal BS. But it just reinforces the idea that sex is shameful, which is why the author had to write all these contrivances for Emelin to begin with. The author thinks she's showing growth. Emelin finally chooses, speaks the words, touches him first, crosses a boundary that she'd been forbidden to cross. That reads like empowerment in a conventional romance arc. Consent is dressed up as freedom, but actually works as containment. Emelin's supposed empowerment is really just the moment where she learns to eroticize her own repression. Creon's supposed vulnerability is really just his inability to desire without needing a woman to sanctify him. What's tragic here, and why you should feel bad for the author, is that this is probably the only model she had for writing empowered romance. Contemporary fantasy romance often sells itself on the aesthetic of consent, such as the verbal check-ins, the you show me your limits line, while leaving untouched the deeper cultural shame that forces heroines to narrate their desire as ruin and corruption. The only way Emelin can arrive at that point is through a labyrinth of denial, shame, and ritualized justification. She has to frame her desire as corruption, as moral failure, as something being done to her instead of something she actively wants. And yet her final yes is not liberation, it's the surrender to shame. The chapter finishes with Creon and Emelin finishing. Creon leaned over as he plunged into me, teeth scraping my ear. His hard breath brushed my neck, and I imagined for a moment that I heard my name in that meaningless whisper of air. It was that thought that undid me. She's finally able to finish because she imagines Creon said her name. Yeah, totally not desperate for validation at all. Creon also finishes, all over her ruined dress, belly, and legs. The chapter ends with her thinking, right now I needed a bath, and I could think of worse company to have it in. It's weird that she's always worried about losing control of her magic, but she doesn't in this scene that is supposed to be emotionally intense. She even thinks, quote, I blew apart like the stones he had me break, thoughts and moans and sanity shattering in his arms as my release finally tore through me, end quote. Again, her loss of sanity is brought up as an excuse to enjoy sexuality. But she's not concerned with losing control of her magic, even though that is shown to happen multiple times throughout the book when she's emotional. It's more evidence that the dangers in this book are always just contrivances, excuses to give Emelin opportunities to be romanced by Creon, which is exactly what you'd expect from a fantasy romance book, but it feels bad to be able to see the strings the author manipulates you with. Chapter 15, short summary. Emelin has another meeting with Lyn and Tarid, her magical allies who live in the Feywood. They gossip about Creon, Mother, and some of Mother's commanders. Importantly, we learn that one of Mother's henchmen, named Thysandra, is in love with a demon on the rebel side named Anaxia. Emelin later uses this to persuade Thysandra to go against Mother. Detailed summary. Em wakes up in Creon's house again, with Creon's erection poking her. Something was prodding my thigh, something warm and hard and far too familiar. She thinks about how she is happy to have lost their game. Though Emelin is mostly happy with the progress she has made with Creon, she still feels echoes of shame for being sexual with Creon. I had lost, shamefully, disgracefully lost. I felt oddly triumphant, though. Another quote, Fae whore, had it really just been a week ago that I stumbled from those stables, convinced I never wanted to see him again? A week. Another quote, whatever exactly had come over me last night, end quote. Again, her sexual activity is framed as a temporary loss of sanity rather than as an empowering choice. Em realizes she forgot to meet Lyn and Tarid today, and if she doesn't, they'll probably assume Creon or the other Fae killed her. Creon catches her trying to sneak out, stops her by grabbing her wrist. A hand locked around my wrist as I shoved towards the edge of the bed. Here we have the normalization of violence, a reminder that Creon is physically dominant. She lies and says she just wants to go on a walk to clear her head. I'll be back, I managed, unsure of what I could say to minimize the damage. I'll be fine, just need a walk to get my head straight, all right? His fingers on my wrists loosened slightly, but not happily, end quote. She's only able to leave if he allows her to leave. He loosens his grip so she can leave. More non-consensual violent behavior, yay. And she asks him to make her breakfast and kisses him to reassure him. For some reason, this scene reads like a wife escaping her abusive husband, having to lie to him and outmaneuver his physical attempts to stop her. He nodded and released me, but his eyes lingered on my face, full of anxious questions, full of fear. 130 years without a soul to talk to, and now he had finally opened the door a chink for me. How much did it cost him to let me walk? And yet he'd released me. So it's okay for Creon to use physical force, police when she's allowed to leave, all because he's feeling insecure? His smile seemed a little more genuine now. Any specific... I kissed him before he could finish that question. Is this line supposed to read as romantic reassurance, or providing sexual access to bargain for her freedom? He still tasted of me. It called up memories of his lips in entirely different places, and I might have been blushing a little by the time I let go. You can tell the author is putting in so much work to try to restore Emelin's virtue, reassuring us that she still feels a proper shame about sex, blushing at the thought of what happened. The Bechdel test is a simple 3-point criteria for evaluating female representation in a work of fiction. 1. It must have at least 2 women in the scene. 2. They must talk to each other, and 3. They must discuss something besides a man. Emelin meets Lynn in the woods, and they immediately fail the Bechdel test. They say Tarad isn't here because she wants to talk about Creon, and talking about Creon makes Tarad mad. They pull a bag of food from a bush to snack on. Emelin asks, "Do you people just leave bags with food around throughout Feywood?" "More or less," Lynn said brightly. "Bela left this one here for us yesterday. There should still be some cake in it." "Okay, why don't the giant hounds smell and eat these bags of food?" "Nobody knows." Lynn explains how Mother genocided the phoenixes and elves by killing them in ways they couldn't resurrect, with Tarad saving Lynn from death several times. And Mother also took away their fertility, causing any survivors to slowly die out over time. Interesting that Mother magically took away Creon's voice because he loved to sing. When it comes to taking away what's important to the women characters, she takes away their fertility because they love to give birth? If you're trying to rule over everyone, wouldn't you want them to be able to make more peasants for you? Elon Musk is always talking about birth rates for the same reason. This part seems questionable, but Lynn just says nobody understands Mother's magic, and their resources are too limited to study more. Anyways, Mother bound everyone to be unable to magically attack her and took Creon's voice during the last battle. Lynn and Tarad were rebellion leaders during the last battle, but were defeated by Mother. M tries to ask about how Creon lost his voice to Mother, but Lynn just says Creon is stronger than her. She doesn't know how he lost to her, losing his voice and becoming bound, unable to attack her. We continue to fail the Bechdel test as Lynn continues to talk about Creon, how they captured him several times during the war, how he used to love to sing, and how he described his killings in graphic detail with no remorse. Lynn talking about Creon versus Mother. "He's the stronger mage of them both," she said with a joyless smile. Creon's tattoos are also a result of Mother abusing him, tattooing his mistakes on him so that he would become the perfect killer. Kinda like the movie Memento. M doesn't think this is ridiculous. Instead, she feels sorry for him. Just like last chapter, M having sex with Creon is supposed to redeem him. In this chapter, learning about Creon's tragic childhood is supposed to absolve him of all the torturing and mass murdering he does. After talking about Creon more, Lynn and M basically agree that Creon had no choice but to become a murderer, and that it's all Mother's fault, not his. So much for being morally gray. He's basically a super good guy who is magically compelled to do bad things when he really doesn't want to. Plus, he seems to want to change, and Mother abandoned him to save herself during the last battle. So really, Creon is the victim here, not all the children whose eyes he gouged out and skinned alive. Emelin says, "We were still talking about the male who'd make me breakfast when I returned, who'd probably treat me to another round of mind-blowing pleasure if I wanted, and wouldn't touch me with so much as a finger if I didn't want him to. Sure, he's a Fae version of Ted Bundy, but dang girl, he's making you pancakes. Also, did we forget that 5 minutes ago he grabbed you by the wrist and refused to let you go until you offered a plausible explanation as to why you were leaving?" Then they talk about other racial allies, vampires and nymphs and elves, before moving on to Thysandra and Anaxia, also known as Naxi, and how Naxi cries for days whenever Thysandra's name is mentioned. Naxi is the demon that Thysandra fell in love with during the last battle, but they're on opposite sides. Thysandra works for Mother, and Naxi is part of the rebellion. Thysandra and Naxi get their own book later in the series, but for this book, their romance is important because it allows Emelin to bargain with Thysandra and turn her against Mother. Later in the book, M encourages Thysandra to change sides for her true love, the demon Anaxia, mirroring M and Creon's relationship against Mother. The author wants to pin everything on the ridiculously, cartoonishly evil Mother, as to neatly absolve all other characters so they can have their guilt-free romances. The chapter ends with Lynn saying how impressed she is that M has survived weeks in Creon's company, and that they'll meet again tomorrow so they can share more juicy goss about Creon. Spill the tea, girl. Welcome back to Chapter 16 of A Court of Blood and Bindings, justifying torture and murder, excusing the morally gray hero. Short summary, in this chapter, Creon is ordered to torture and kill another island of humans, a place named Rudak. This makes both Emelin and Creon depressed, and M decides to run off to the labyrinth for sympathy while Creon is gone. The labyrinth turns out to be sentient, and M begins befriending it through flattery. Detailed summary. After Emelin's meeting with Lynn in the previous chapter, M runs home to Creon's pavilion, feeling very sorry for him and wanting to hug him, thinking about how to rebuild his trust and comfort him. She finds Creon on the porch looking depressed. Turns out he has to publicly torture and execute some rebellion survivors in a place named Rudak. Quote, kill people, he was going to kill them, the rulers who'd seen the injustice their people were suffering, who'd taken that brave, reckless risk to challenge the Crimson Court itself in a desperate attempt to improve life on their island, and now they would die for having been nothing but decent, and it was going to be Creon who, end quote. M asks if Creon can let the humans secretly escape like he did for her island of Cathra in Chapter 2, but Mother's orders are to publicly torture and execute them to send a message to other humans thinking of rebellion. Creon cannot spare them, telling Emelin all sorts of reasons as to why this time he can't secretly let everyone escape, like he did in M's hometown of Cathra. Quote, she wants it public. She'll tell me to take their families instead, end quotes. M and Creon are both distraught over what he has to do about Creon's orders. M pleads with him to find a way to spare the humans. What do you think, his finger snapped at me, I've been doing for 130 years? Creon snaps at her in sign language, and they have a bit of a mini fight about it, and he takes off alone to do his job. Alone while Creon is on his mass torture and murder mission, M worries and feels guilty. Not for the victims, but for Creon. She feels helpless until she gets the bright idea to return to the labyrinth by herself, while Creon is gone. She admits it's a crazy idea, using the word reckless 4 times in a page, but that doesn't stop her. She goes anyways. Even though she and Creon were recently caught in the labyrinth by a guard, and this time she won't have Creon protecting her, she still goes. At the labyrinth, Emelin flirts with the mountain, her words, not mine, which seems to respond in gusts of warm air as affirmatives. Quote, I cautiously laid my hand against the smooth tunnel wall and said, hello, beautiful. A gust of warm air hit me in the face. Sorry it's taken me so long to return, I said, ignoring the fact that I stood here flirting with a mountain, and praying that I wasn't interpreting the signs entirely wrong, that I wasn't somehow antagonizing this place through my transparent attempts at flattery, end quote. Don't worry, Emelin has enough plot armor that she uses cheesy pickup lines on the mountain, complimenting its physical looks, rather than trying to find a point of common interest or a more empathic choice. Emelin continues to flatter and compliment the magical mountain, which seems to be pleased by her attention. When the mountain is pleased, it responds with warm gusts of air. She says, I'm guessing you don't like the Fae too much, I concluded. I can imagine, really. They just burst in here to build that palace above you, didn't they? So rude. They probably didn't even ask for your permission, end quote. After all the wrist-grabbing and contrived setups where Creon has to pretend M is his human sex slave, just so Emelin can maintain her moral purity, this book really just drops a line about consent, as if it has the moral high ground. Quote, a dusty sense of cold swept past me. Had I said something wrong, or was the labyrinth simply angry at the mere memory of those past transgressions? I'm going with the first explanation, although the book implies the latter. She also worries the mountain might just kill her if it happens to be on Mother's side. Worrying doesn't stop her from risking her life without Creon's help, though. With the power of plot armor, M manages to quickly build a rapport with the mountain through their mutual hatred of Mother. She also has a moment of therapy with the mountain, vaguely hinting that she is stressed about Creon having to torture the rebellious humans of Rudak. She says, I didn't want to come here and upset you, I promise. I just don't know what to think anymore. Don't know what I'm doing anymore, ... The mountain responds with sympathy, then lights up a glowing path for M so she can map out a path that goes under Mother's throne, her supposed weak point. The mountain labyrinth is now clearly her ally. Successful, Emelin goes home. Emelin's home is Creon's pavilion, which he totally didn't abduct and kidnap and hold her hostage in. Analysis. This chapter is supposed to build further sympathy for Creon, explaining how he is forced to do Mother's evil bidding and that he's the real victim here, because it hurts him more than his victims. That's doubly true in the next chapter, where it's revealed that Creon magically absorbs his victims' pain in order to mercy kill them. Never mind the fact that only physical pain is absorbed, not psychological or emotional pain, people still have to watch their loved ones being tortured to death, unaware that they're under magical anesthesia. This chapter also serves to rebuild the reader's credence in Emelin's righteousness. After the big sex scene in chapter 14, Emelin is rebuilt as a righteous woman, doubling down on her conviction to stop Mother's evil, for the sake of humanity, for Creon, and for her magical allies Lyn and Tarid. Mother is a woman in power who administers violence. She is the big bad villain of the series, which makes her easy to blame for almost everything. Why did the author choose to make Creon's mother the ultimate villain instead of his demon father? Is it because a woman in power is more easily perceived as monstrous or unnatural? Why does Emelin choose to use a gendered insult, calling Mother a faceless bitch stealing our food and money? There were so many other options here besides a gendered insult, and yet the main character chooses to express her grievances through misogynistic language. The mother, with her ironically maternal name, seems to be the sole source of all violence and evil in the story. The author could have chosen to depict a more systemic form of evil by distributing oppressive power amongst the other Fae, instead of making Mother the autocrat responsible for everything bad. Final thoughts for this chapter. Throughout the book, Emelin has been repeatedly robbed of agency when it comes to her sexuality. Instead, Creon pushes her in contrived situations where she has to perform sexuality or die. And yet, when a woman is shown to have complete autonomy in the character of Mother, she is depicted as unequivocally evil. So if Emelin shows sexual agency, the author suggests she is shameful and immoral, and when Mother shows agency, she is depicted as pure evil. A Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 17, Short Summary. Creon and Em return from their respective missions, but Creon has nearly tortured himself to death by secretly absorbing the pain of his torture victims, to kill them without them feeling most of it. Em cares for Creon, and then things get steamy between them. Em goes home from the labyrinth to continue mapping from her notes, but Creon returns in a near-death state. He used magic to take his victims' pain, effectively torturing himself to death 7 times, instead of letting his victims feel the pain. Em absolves Creon of all his sins, assuming he has done this for all his victims since the last battle, and feeling horrible for ever having blamed Creon for any wrongdoing. Creon, have you been doing this? Have you been killing and torturing yourself all this time since the last battle? A single tear escaped his closed eyelid, rolling down the pale, sweaty lines of his cheek. No, I couldn't breathe fast enough, deep enough, as if someone was squeezing the life from my lungs. Black spots danced before my eyes. You, oh gods, no, and I blamed you for... This is a pivotal moment in the book. We find out that Creon is not a sadistic torturer, but rather a tragic martyr. Throughout the book, Emelin has questioned her attraction to Creon, given that he tortures and murders humans, but now we find out that he's been absorbing their pain, and only kills them when he is forced to by the evil Fae Queen. This completely flips the script. Creon is now noble and self-sacrificing, rather than sadistic and evil. As a consequence, Emelin is shown to be wrong for doubting him. This also means it's okay for her to be attracted to him, since he's actually a super good guy, not a sadistic executioner. It is unfair. Emelin has to do all of this emotional labor. He gets to be the cool guy who does a bunch of red flag behavior that gets justified in the end. And the insulting implication is that if you ever doubted him, you are the one who is stupid for not blindly believing. Any readers who have been burned by someone who exhibits any of these red flags will feel a sense of disgust at seeing them rewritten in a way that shows Emelin to be wrong for ever doubting him. This major plot twist also reinforces the virgin redeemer trope, where Emelin's innocence, purity, and goodness are used to absolve Creon's sins, but it also presents some other problems. Throughout this book, there are contrived setups to help Emelin maintain her innocence or give her plausible deniability to be sexual with Creon, such as the lunch scene with Mother, the Fae orgy, having to sleep in his bed in case someone sees, etc. As the FMC, Emelin is not allowed to be openly sexual or sinful, yet Creon is allowed to be morally gray, complex, and flawed. This isn't just about sexual double standards where men are allowed to cross lines that women aren't. This is gaslighting as a narrative structure. Emelin's doubts about Creon are always reframed as her being wrong, even when his behavior is objectively concerning. His aloofness isn't neglect, it's reframed as secret and stoic suffering. His violence isn't cruelty, it's reframed as noble self-sacrifice. Her mistrust is never validated, it's ignorance that must be dispelled. Why was he aloof and leaving her alone for weeks at a time? He thought he was a bother towards her, so he's actually super considerate for ditching her, even though she could have been raped or murdered while he was gone, and she almost was by Ophion. Why has Creon been torturing and murdering humans for 130 years? Because only he can secretly absorb their pain. Their deaths cannot be avoided under the Fae Queen's evil regime, but he can be the one to secretly give them mercy. So if you ever thought that he was wrong for torturing and murdering humans, you are the fool for ever doubting him. So after all the red flags and bad behavior that concerned Emelin, the plot goes out of its way to prove her wrong. We see the female protagonist's perceptions delegitimized, and instead the male protagonist's horrific actions are justified. As a result, Emelin now owes Creon for doubting him. The physical attraction she has felt towards him, despite being abducted, lied to, left alone for weeks at a time in a strange land surrounded by murderers, rapists, and racist Fae, is finally justified. We're told that Creon was a super good guy this whole time, and that Emelin is wrong for doubting him. Why isn't it Creon's fault for hiding this from her? Why isn't Emelin allowed to be mad that he hid this from her and continue to try to hide it from her? Even in this chapter, he says that he didn't expect her to be awake, and so he thought he could continue hiding what he was doing from her. Instead, Em apologizes profusely to Creon and vows to take care of him to repent for ever doubting his goodness. She acknowledges the 7 victims still died, but she gets distracted with Creon's body while washing him. Creon explains his pain is phantom pain and that Em's touches relieve it. How convenient. Em asks what it's like when his wings are touched, since that seems to be especially pleasurable for him. In an ET phone home moment, Creon touches her lip and psychically transfers the sensation to her, arousing Em. She starts sucking on his finger. His finger was hard and unyielding and demanding in a way that made my belly tremble with sudden heat. I met him with the tip of my tongue swirling around his fingertip in luscious strokes. His eyes drew tighter as he watched me, his finger a motionless, irresistible weight. They forget he's dying and start making out. A minute later, things escalate and he's using his fingers and giving an oral performance. The rest of the chapter is things escalating physically and him mouthing her name during penetration, which makes her feel really validated. This moment is supposed to be emotional catharsis, since it's the first time they both openly admitted their unreserved affection for each other. Previously, in the ballroom orgy scene, it was masked behind their touch mirror game in a competitive way. This chapter is the big breakthrough in their relationship, where they can finally admit they like each other and that it's justified. But why does the narrative take on this whole I can fix him arc? In a normal relationship, people get to know each other and build trust slowly, but in these romantasy books, there's always a massive power imbalance and gaslight structure. MMC forces FMC to be sexual to help her maintain plausible deniability while enjoying sexuality. This makes sense if you acknowledge the influence of purity culture and gender roles and the fact that America is still a surprisingly Christian nation. But there is a second plotline that comes up again and again in romantasy books. There's always a gaslighting structure where MMC does a bunch of weird red flag behaviors like being overly secretive, aloof, mysterious, hiding important information from FMC, stalking her, responding to threats with overwhelming violence instead of appropriate force. And I could go on, but the general idea is that all of MMC's rapey, red flaggy, darkly coercive behavior gets justified and eroticized as proof that he cares about FMC, rather than turning out to be proof that he's a psychopath. There are two sides of the same coin. One is justification for FMC to enjoy sexuality without being called a slut or whore because she was forced to. The other is justification for men to continue displaying patriarchal, masculine behaviors and have them be depicted as attractive rather than selfish, disturbing, and destructively psychotic. I Can Fix Him is built into the romance formula itself, showing that it's okay for men to be flawed and selfish as long as they have a woman who loves them enough to do all of the emotional labor, to have never-ending compassion and forgiveness to redeem him. The woman is usually naive, virginal, innocent, or in a position of power imbalance, someone who would be extremely exploitable, and is shown to be the ideal candidate for romance. However, the FMC cannot be truly selfish. Readers would tear apart any FMC who acts as selfish, cold, and flawed as a typical MMC. It would be too much of a departure from the expected gender roles. Instead, she has to be humble, often depicted as insecure. Throughout the book, she repeatedly refers to herself as unworthy, gaunt, bony, inferior. All of this serves to push her towards submission to Creon. The gaslight structure serves as programming for women to serve men, to submit to men, to forgive their selfishness, to endlessly look for ways to forgive blatantly selfish and psychotic behaviors. The subtext or relationship model is, surely, if I just keep doing all the emotional labor in this relationship and submit to his whims, I'll eventually see the payoff, right? But what if there is no payoff? What if women just end up being repeatedly exploited? The man gets to be secretive, aloof, selfish, dishonest, and corrupt her sexually. What if in real life there is no cathartic redemption that makes all of the woman's sacrifice pay off? What if there's no fairness expected, no reciprocation? If you wanted to trick people into playing the lottery, which is a losing game, You would just keep highlighting winners and distract people with positive emotions that show how good their life will be when they finally win. Similarly, Emelin has to just trust Creon when he burns down her whole village, abducts her, leaves her alone with murderers and rapists. Creon appears to be a mass murderer and torturer himself, all while being minimally communicative, and the book's lesson is there will be a huge payout if you ignore all of that. She has to accept all of this bad behavior, be his therapist, be his sex slave, and be proven wrong for ever doubting him. This payout ignores the risks she took, the horrible positions she was in, and the fact that most of the time, if we're being realistic, being in those positions would end very badly. At the very least, it's unfair to set the expectation that the woman should accept all of this, while the man just gets to act cool and do his own thing. It's not just Emelin who is being gaslit, it's the reader. A Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 18, Short Summary. In the previous chapter, Creon and Em had their big intimacy breakthrough. Here, Emelin has another meeting with Lyn and Terrid, her magical allies, and wonders whether she can trust Creon more than she trusts Lyn and Terrid. They tell her that Creon has demon heritage, enabling him to manipulate emotions, and causing Emelin to doubt whether her feelings for Creon are real or manipulated. Detailed summary. Emelin and Creon wake up in bed together, and they have some flirty banter about Emelin being a bed hog. Em wonders if she is in love with Creon. They've only known each other for about a week. Besides their breakneck relationship speed, it's pretty amazing they're able to have fluent conversations already, considering he's been learning sign language from her for less than a week. Plot convenience. Emelin explains she became friends with the labyrinth and found the way to sneak up on Mother's throne from underneath the mountain. Em remembers her scheduled meeting with Lyn and debates whether or not to tell Creon the truth this time. Conveniently, Creon tells her he is scheduled to make a report to Mother and will be gone for a while, so Emelin decides not to tell him about her meeting. Considering she almost died to a zombie hound the size of a horse previously, it would be wise if she told him where she is going, but she doesn't. She meets Lyn and Terrid in the Feywood, where they pull more food and drink from the bushes. Emelin wonders whether she should be more loyal to Creon or to Lyn and Terrid. We again fail the Bechdel test as Emelin tries to convince Lyn that Creon is trustworthy and that she's learned so much about him over the past week that really makes her feel like he's a good guy. Lyn and Terrid reveal that Creon's father is a demon, making Creon half demon and half fae. Emelin is shocked and recalls Creon avoiding the subject. They explain his demon magic would allow him to feed off of emotional pain, which makes Emelin suspicious about Creon's claim to absorb the 7 victims' torture pain for them. They also explain that Creon can use his powers to read and manipulate Emelin's emotions, making her suspect that's why she's in love with him. Analysis. In the previous chapter, Emelin thought she could finally trust Creon, but now she is suspicious again. After feeling like everything was going so well with Creon that she is in love with him, now she feels disgusted and manipulated. This serves to re-establish the drama. The plot twist that Creon has demon magic which can manipulate emotions pushes the reset button on Emelin's feelings for Creon. Maybe he has been feeding off his torture victim's anguish. Maybe he has manipulated her love using demon magic. If you're following the pattern of the book, however, you can guess that none of this will turn out to be true, and that once again Emelin will be shown to be so stupid for ever doubting Creon. In the Chapter 17 analysis, I covered the gaslighting narrative structure, and this time the plot will turn out to be no different. Emelin's doubts about Creon are always proven to be wrong. It's not just about proving that Creon is actually a good guy. The book sets up a cycle where the heroine is punished for mistrust instead of rewarded for critical thinking. As a woman, her perceptions are shown to be wrong, her suspicions unfounded. Meanwhile, the male lead's dangerous qualities are romanticized. In effect, the book suggests that doubting a man with enormous structural and magical power is unreasonable, which reinforces gendered power imbalances. It's disempowering for the book to constantly reinforce Emelin's dependency on Creon, considering the vulnerable position she's in. First, her sexual agency is undermined by always having her forced into contrived scenarios, so that she has plausible deniability for enjoying sex. Now, her emotions and sanity are undermined once again by always proving her doubts about Creon are wrong. The gaslight narrative structure will continue, and in the next chapter, Emelin and Creon will have their biggest fight of the book, their third act breakup. A Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 19, Short Summary. Em and Creon have their biggest fight, the third act breakup. She accuses him of manipulating her emotions using his demon magic to make her fall in love with him. He flies off angry, and she runs off to the labyrinth to vent to it like a therapy session. Detailed summary and analysis. Just when the romance between Emelin and Creon seemed to be going so well, here comes their biggest fight yet. If you dislike the miscommunication third act breakup tropes as much as I do, brace yourself. After learning about Creon's demon magic in the previous chapter, Em is in shock and rushes back to confront Creon about hiding his demon magic, and accuse him of using it to manipulate her emotions. Em flies into a rage, crying and screaming, and not giving Creon any chance to explain, just continuously throwing more accusations at him. At the end of her long, exhausting rant, Em blurts out she would rather side with Lynn and Tarad to kill Mother than continue working with Creon. Why is the miscommunication and third act breakup trope used here? There are only a few chapters left in which Creon and Emelin have to break up, get back together, and tackle the evil Fae Queen. But first, let's have a moment of silence for Helmer. You've probably forgotten about him since he was only mentioned 6 times in the entire book, compared to Creon being named 548 times. Helmer is a moderately handsome human, Emelin's ex-boyfriend, more like a short fling. They never had sex, but Em still remembers Helmer as her only dating experience during her 6-month apprenticeship. The only reason Helmer exists is to be compared to Creon, to show how much better Creon is and how inferior Helmer is. If you've ever read any monster romance books, you know there's always a human ex-boyfriend who is the designated punching bag, whose only existence is to be compared to the male main character, to conclude that he is vastly inferior to the much sexier and often much girthier MMC.
What is my purpose?
Pass the butter! Thank you!
This is the last time we'll see Helmer in this book, and possibly the series, so thank you for your service, Helmer. So why am I spending so much time joking about Helmer? It's because Em and Creon's third act breakup fight is so predictable. Now it's Creon's turn to be miscommunicative, angry, and hurt. He flies off and leaves before either of them have any chance to explain. This trope always makes the characters feel like grade schoolers and shreds what little respect I have for their choices. Really? Mr. 368 years old Fae Prince flies off in a huffy temper tantrum? Okay. This is the kind of conflict mismanagement and failure to de-escalate that you might expect from the police in a predominantly African-American neighborhood, yet it shows up in so many romances as a dramatic climax for the main couple to overcome. Sorry, was that reference to police brutality jarring? Did it pull you out of the literary analysis? Yeah, that's how it feels when you're trying to enjoy a romance and the author throws in this extremely formulaic trope of third act breakup. It feels so unnecessary and shamelessly edgy. I apologize for the comparison. Let's go with a different comparison. This is the kind of conflict mismanagement and failure to de-escalate that you might expect from 2 billionaires slap fighting on Twitter. Come on guys, can't we just kiss and make up? Authors use the third act breakup as a cheesy way to set up for the characters choosing each other when they reconcile. It's supposed to set up a sweet climax of reconciliation later, but it always feels like the main characters both went insane at the same time for no reason. Keep in mind, Emelin is not mad at him for abducting her, burning down her house and everything she owns even though she begged him not to, leaving her alone for the week in the midst of murderous, rapey, racist Fae, almost letting her die to a zombie hound on the beach. She was saved by someone else, by the way, treating her like a sex slave in front of everyone because that's the cover story he decided to go with. She's only mad that her horny for him may not be entirely genuine. Alright. Continuing their fight, Em paces around by herself, debating whether or not Creon has been manipulating her with demon magic to fall in love with him. This goes on for pages and makes no sense. Here's why. 1. Em already has plenty of motivation to kill Mother, the evil Fae Queen, whether she likes Creon romantically or not. For the purpose of assassinating the evil Fae Queen, there's no real motivation for Creon to fabricate a romance between them. Emelin already wants to kill the Fae Queen to save humanity. Fabricating a romance is counterproductive to that. Romance only creates more risk and distracts from their goal of killing Mother, since all the time they spend flirting and getting physical could have been spent training or strategizing instead. 2. If Creon really is manipulating Em's emotions, she wouldn't be able to feel or stay super angry at him anyways. Isn't it obvious? Accusing someone of mind controlling you doesn't make sense. If they really are mind controlling you, you won't be able to accuse them. Angry and alone, Em packs some supplies and returns to the labyrinth, which she uses as a therapist in a venting session. Using its friendly, sentient, glowing path, she lets the labyrinth lead her through the dark for hours until she is directly under the throne of the evil Fae Queen, who she calls the B word again, because this book doesn't have enough anti-feminism without adding in gendered insults. In these last few chapters, you'll see the labyrinth serves as an extremely convenient magical plot device. It's not just her therapist and best friend on the island, it's also her strongest ally. It's kind of sad that the only time she can express her true feelings is by going to a cave and talking to walls of rock. But I guess if Creon were to show as much emotional intelligence as a wall of rock, that would make him a beta male cuck and completely gross. The labyrinth ends up doing the emotional work that Creon should have been doing, but of course he won't, because he is exempt from emotional labor. Kind of like when it's Thanksgiving, all the women in the family are in the kitchen, and all the men are just sitting on the couch talking and watching TV. M considers blasting the throne from below to launch a surprise attack alone, but in a rare moment of good judgment, remembers an Eminem lyric that says, "You only get one shot, do not miss your chance to blow. Opportunity comes once in a lifetime, yo." So she wisely decides to retreat and get help, but runs directly into Ophion and his henchmen. Ophion is the rapey guy from chapter 7. He tried to have sex with M, Creon mogged him and made him run away, and ever since then, Ophion has been plotting to get revenge. Remember when Emelin asked Creon, "Won't you get in trouble for throwing him out?" Pepper Ridge Farm remembers. In the next chapter, we will see that Creon was stupid for dismissing this thought because Ophion has been planning his revenge this whole time. You know, because that's what adults are supposed to do, plan things. Feminist critique. The use of the B word in this chapter is not a standalone point. The book has a larger pattern of misogyny. First, Emelin is almost the perfect victim. She has no money. Creon is extremely wealthy. She has low self-esteem and calls herself bony, gaunt, inferior compared to Creon's impossible beauty. She is displaced from her home, abducted to his, surrounded by danger. She is a human on an island full of fae who have zero empathy for her. Emelin has barely ever practiced her magic compared to Creon, who is the strongest mage in 4,000 years of recorded history. And yet she has to trust that the spell that he cast is supposed to protect her from him. Second, the book exemplifies gender roles. Purity culture means Emelin can never choose to have sex with Creon. She has to be forced into sexual situations, so the reader knows it's not her fault. Creon is stoic, silent, and suffers in secret. Emelin does all the emotional labor to get him to open up and then redeem him. In a massive I can fix him arc, Emelin gives up her autonomy to save Creon. Meanwhile, the Fae Queen is the woman with the most autonomy in the world, and she is depicted as unequivocally evil. Chapter 19 isn't just a perfect example of a third act breakup, it's the stage for bigger gender dynamics to play out. A Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 20, short summary. Previously, M and Creon had their big fight, and M went to explore the Forbidden Labyrinth by herself. She is caught by Ophion, one of Mother's henchmen. Ophion brings M and Creon to trial before the evil Fae Queen. Ophion accuses Creon of being a traitor, with evidence that Creon and M have been digging around for information on the Forbidden Labyrinth. Creon chooses to take all the blame, allowing Emelin to plead innocence. Creon is tortured and chained up in the throne room for everyone to see, while Emelin is free to plot how to rescue him. Detailed summary. Ophion catches Emelin exploring the Forbidden Labyrinth by herself. Emelin tries to play dumb and continue her silly little human act to deceive Ophion. Ophion tells her that entering the labyrinth is a capital crime, punishable by death. Emelin pleads ignorance and says the door is simply open, but they notice she's holding her map. M claims it was just common sense to make a map, and Ophion is confused enough to order one of his men to get Creon to corroborate her story. Ophion decides to drag her to Mother for judgment. The reconciliation between Creon and Emelin begins when, on the way there, Emelin suddenly realizes it makes no sense that she accused Creon of manipulating her emotions with demon magic, since you cannot accuse someone who is mind-controlling you. Like a schoolboy, Ophion tattles on Emelin to Mother, saying he found her exiting the labyrinth and that Creon has been checking out books on the labyrinth according to library staff. M tries to stall and buy time for Creon to show up, admitting that she did see the books, but she can't read the Fae language, so she only liked the pretty pictures. M repeats her lie that the door was already open and that she didn't know it was forbidden to enter. Creon finally shows up, and M instantly gets super horny for him, even though it's a life or death situation. It's a body betrays me trope moment, which fits in with the theme of romance books often portraying dubious consent. What was I doing? What was my body doing to me? It was supposed to be a lie, this merciless attraction, this need I felt. But my eyes clung to him as he approached, to his swift, slender fingers, and his night-black eyes, and the contours of muscles below his shirt and trousers, and a painfully familiar sting of twisted desire burnt through me, as if it had never been gone. With both of them about to be possibly tortured and executed, it's a really bizarre moment to get horny, but it actually fits with the purity culture throughout the book. The body betrays me trope is designed to make a woman seem like she's trying to resist the immorality of sexual attraction. It implies she knows premarital sex is immoral, and thus it's a virtue signal to the reader. I know being horny is wrong, but my body is betraying me. This whole scene where Emelin and Creon are on trial together serves as their reconciliation after their big fight in the previous chapter. Mother asks Creon to explain why Em was in the Forbidden Labyrinth. In a form of trauma bonding while both of them are on trial together, now Emelin feels full of rage on Creon's behalf and how cruel Mother has always been to Creon, binding him, forcing him to murder, and taking away his voice. In a moment of total sympathy, Em suddenly begins recalling all the validating reassurances Creon gave her at the end of chapter 13. Keep in mind that Creon is not actually apologizing to her here. She has to fabricate an apology in her head by having flashbacks to when he was nice to her that one time. With Ophion's report that Creon and Em have been gathering books on the labyrinth, Mother concludes that Em broke into the labyrinth deliberately. Creon says, not going to defend her, and his callousness amuses Mother, but secretly he hand signs to Em over and over, blame me. This fits in as a performance of his gender role. It's a women and children exit on the lifeboats first moment. In a time of life or death, the man is supposed to take the fall so that the woman can live. It's also a grand gesture. It's way easier and more masculine for Creon to take the blame at this trial, rather than do all the hard work of being emotionally available and clearly communicating to Emelin. Throughout the entire book, he was aloof, distant, suffering in secret, and would often withhold the truth from Emelin, assuming he was the only one strong enough to take on the burdens. Now we're supposed to forgive him because he puts his life on the line in this key moment, when he's just been flying off and doing his own thing while Emelin begs him not to go, begs him for explanations for the other 99% of the book. Anyways, Em, desperately hoping Creon has a plan, blames Creon and says he told her to go in, but that she doesn't understand why. Mother compels Creon to talk, but he refuses, so she begins torturing him with magical attacks, while asking Em if she should spare him for betraying Em. Em is confused as to whether or not Creon has any plan, but he signals kill me, so Em suggests Mother kill Creon. Mother, being a contrarian, then decides not to kill Creon, so she asks Em what to do with him instead. Em suggests putting Creon on display as a warning to other betrayers, and Mother loves the idea. Creon is chained up in the hall for everyone to see, putting hooks through his sensitive wing membranes. Em pretends to giggle and nod in delight at Creon's punishment. This is like one of those James Bond moments where the villain does some intricate plan to make the hero suffer, which then gives the hero an opportunity to eventually escape, instead of just double tapping the hero on the spot and being done with it. It's especially unclear as to why Mother would even ask Emelin for her opinion, because the Fae regard human like cockroaches in general. Most Fae would think it's beneath them to even ask a human for their opinion, even if it's for the purpose of sadistically doing the opposite. The chapter ends with Em asking Mother for a favor, which she entertains. This is a contrived plot device to give Emelin a chance to concoct a rescue plan for Creon. Em boldly proclaims that she will gift Mother a proper substitute for the tribute she never received from the island of Cathra if she is allowed one night of undisturbed preparation. Mother accepts, giving Em one unsupervised night to prepare. This part makes no sense because Ophion would at least volunteer to watch Em, if only to delight in tormenting her. Instead, Thysandra is assigned to drop Em off at Creon's house, unsupervised. Analysis. Chapter 20 is the pivot point between Emelin and Creon's breakup in Chapter 19, and their union against the evil Fae Queen Mother. Creon takes the blame to prove his loyalty to Emelin and reconcile with her. Creon hand-signaling blame me is an exaggerated masculine performance. It's a shortcut designed to restore his image as noble protector, even though he neglected Emelin throughout most of the story. Instead of doing the hard work of consistent intimacy, listening, sharing, being vulnerable, his masculinity is framed as a grand gesture of self-sacrifice, pain, and more suffering in silence. Even though the author clearly wants Emelin to be perceived as quick thinking by negotiating for Creon to be tortured instead of killed, the key moment is when Creon actively chooses to take the blame. This means the situation unfolds through Creon's choice, while Emelin is left to react, re-establishing the romance's unequal power dynamic. This self-sacrifice trope is common in dark romantasy. MMC proves his love not through consistent communication and stable partnership, but through a grand gesture of bleeding for the FMC. The body betrays me trope rears its ugly head again in this chapter, when Emelin gets bizarrely horny in a situation where both of them are in great danger. In purity culture, desire is coded as involuntary and sinful. M resists, therefore she is good or pure. Throughout the book, the contrived situations where M gets horny, especially when she is in front of the evil Fae Queen, ties back to the ongoing blurring of agency versus coercion. If Emelin actively chooses to enjoy sex, that would make her a slut or whore in the eyes of purity culture. Emelin is constantly afraid of becoming a Fae whore instead of just performing as one. So instead of enthusiastic consent, we have contrived scenes where she performs as Creon's sex slave under threat of death and gets inexplicably horny under absurd circumstances. There are moments when Creon insists that he won't do anything sexual until Emelin does it first, but these take place in a context similar to Stockholm Syndrome. Creon has abducted Emelin and has a massive power imbalance over her, so when the author tries to pretend that he isn't forcing her to do anything, it backfires and unintentionally comes across as extra manipulative, given the situation he's put her in. Creon's sacrifice, his martyrdom, serves to enforce a cycle. First, he's aloof most of the time. Then when M is finally going to be done with him, he comes back with a grand gesture, thus validating all of the one-sided emotional labor M had to do to maintain their relationship. It feels less like a fulfilling and equal partnership and more like Emelin is paying into an insurance policy. Emelin has to keep paying her monthly premiums of emotional labor in the hopes that Creon will come through with a big payout during an emergency with some kind of grand gesture. There's only 2 more chapters left, and if you're wondering how the author wraps up the plot to assassinate Mother and finishes the reconciliation between M and Creon in a satisfying way, spoiler alert, she doesn't, not quite in a satisfactory way. The ending will feel rushed and unsatisfying, with a Deus Ex Machina plot device. A Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 21, short summary. M comes up with a plan on how to rescue Creon, who is being tortured by the evil Fae Queen. M reads a note from Creon, which attempts to justify all of his weird, aloof actions. Emelin seeks the aid of a human serf named Finn, who lives in the Feywood. Detailed summary with some analysis. With Creon in chains on display, Lysandra flies M back to Creon's house to get her belongings, while M tries to hide her grief. Lysandra asks if M is alright, which is completely out of character for her, since she's supposed to be the villain's henchman. Lysandra also drops a cryptic hint saying, "It can be complicated when the wrong people mean the wrong things to you. Come see me if you need help." Not sure whether to trust her, M pretends to be okay, but suspects Lysandra might secretly be sympathetic to her because she is estranged from her demon lover Anaxia. The author is basically holding up a big neon sign here, saying, Lysandra might secretly be an ally. M now fully believes Creon is on her side, since he sacrificed himself to save her. She suddenly realizes he slipped a note into her pocket. The note is almost an apology from Creon, saying he wishes her well and hopes that Lyn and Terrid will help her more than he has. But if you read the note carefully, it's not actually an apology to Emelin. It's more like a farewell or goodbye note, emphasizing Creon's self-sacrifice and stoic suffering, rather than taking accountability for all of his aloofness, unavailability, and lack of clear communication throughout the book. Creon's note explains his tragic past. His evil Fae Queen mother imprisoned his demon father. His demon father escaped and tortured a 9-year-old Creon, feeding off his torment before mother found them and killed his father on the spot. Creon vowed to never be like his demon father and claims he only used his demon magic on M once to comfort her to sleep on her first night. Supposedly, all of M's romantic feelings towards Creon were her own, not demon magic manipulations. But Creon admits he could sense her feelings the whole time, and admits that's unfair. Imagine you're playing poker, but you can see the other person's cards, and they can't see yours. So being able to read Emelin's emotions didn't lend itself to any kind of manipulation at all? Yeah, right. The last few paragraphs of Creon's note declares how much he cares about her and how he's been aloof this whole time because he was too attracted to her. Imagine you've been begging your partner not to keep ditching you, but they keep leaving you with little to no explanation for weeks. Then they finally come back, without actually apologizing, to write you a ChatGPT note full of M-dashes, saying they went missing because they are too attracted to you, and that they needed to disappear to control their attraction to you. Would you believe them? It sounds like a classic F-boy apology to explain why he's been gone most of the time. The note contains a fair amount of praise and validation, telling M how much he is in awe of her, admires her, and how she's been so brave. I mean, okay, why didn't you say any of that when she was screaming for you not to leave a few chapters ago instead of just disappearing without a word? But reading words of validation for like 5 seconds is enough for Emelin to completely change her mind and forgive all of Creon's F-boy behavior. Emelin, clearly suffering from Stockholm Syndrome, believes every word and cries for a long time, resolving to save Creon no matter what. M comes up with a plan and finds the human woman with a barn again, the one who keeps calling her a Fae whore. This time, M explains that she and Creon are trying to kill Mother, the evil Fae Queen, so the woman is friendlier. The woman, named Finn, no relationship to Adventure Time, explains she is part of a group of human serfs kept on the island to work the lands, and some of them are publicly executed occasionally to keep the people terrorized. Yeah, remember when Creon made a big deal out of reassuring Emelin that the food they're eating is ethically sourced and not from human exploitation? The food was delivered via baskets from other Fae, so how could Creon possibly guarantee it wasn't the result of human exploitation, when they literally have human slave farmers living next door to Creon? It's on the map at the beginning of the book. You can see Greyside, the human slave farms, next to Creon's pavilion. Because M has plot armor, it's safe for her to reveal everything to Finn, including her half-Fae powers, which are supposed to be a big secret, and Finn deduces that Creon needs M to kill Mother because M is the only person with powers who are not bound. Quick reminder, not bound means that she's able to magically attack Mother, unlike everyone else who is bound. This part was crazy to me because Finn threatened to turn her in to the Fae Masters, and yet Emelin immediately reveals information that could get her and Creon killed. Information that she's been hiding her whole life. M and Finn banter some more, with M admitting she is a bit of a Fae whore after all, so Finn agrees to do whatever she can to help M, because now Finn is totally on Emelin's side? Even though she seemed to hate Emelin before, we're supposed to believe Finn hates the Fae more, but then why did she threaten to report Emelin to the Fae when they first met? M's unexplained plan involves spending all night altering her blue dress and going back to the court where Mother is. Remember this for the next chapter. She spent all night altering her dress, staying up until sunrise, so you'd expect some serious alterations, right? Not simply stitching something to the underside of her dress where nobody can see it. Analysis. Emelin is clearly guilty about the way she treated Creon, even though her objections and doubts were perfectly reasonable. After she reads his note and cries until she cannot cry anymore, the reader is supposed to think that Creon has been completely redeemed in her eyes. The book goes out of its way to justify Creon's aloof and uncaring behavior, retconning it as, he secretly cared so much he just couldn't show it. This invalidates Emelin and the reader's perceptions about his suspicious and red flag behaviors throughout the book. It models a relationship where a woman is wrong to doubt a man who is acting suspiciously and to instead assume he is suffering in silence on her behalf. It would be funny if this turned out to be true even half of the time. More often than not, a man who exhibits these red flag behaviors is not suffering in secret on the woman's behalf. He is usually just being selfish, and the woman is right to perceive that. The way the narrative is set up to gaslight Emelin, who is in an extremely vulnerable position, is a harmful portrayal to any woman who has experienced these red flags. It's a classic abuse cycle pacing: mistreatment followed by minimal gesture of validation, followed by emotional high, followed by recommitment. The ultimate takeaway is, if you think your man is cheating on you or being selfish and uncommunicative, you are wrong, not him. And you should apologize and cry until you can't cry anymore for how you've wronged him just by doubting him. By depicting this as romantic, the book risks teaching readers that the apology letter stage is proof of love, not part of a toxic loop. Finn's 180-degree heel turn from Fae whore hater to ally isn't earned, it's more plot convenience. Symbolically, it reinforces the trope that once the heroine admits her flaws or embraces shame labels, women who hated her will suddenly respect her. Like the romanticization of Creon's toxic behaviors, Finn's sudden acceptance of Emelin is also insidious because it suggests solidarity is earned through self-abasement, not mutual resistance to oppression. The dress alteration, or Chekhov's gun dress, serves as narrative padding. You'll see in the final chapter why this preparation scene was a total waste of time and only makes Emelin appear busy while not doing anything actually useful. I cannot stress enough how unearned the ending feels. Creon's ethical food hypocrisy. Creon pulls out the "trust me bro," reassuring Em their food is ethically sourced, while literally living next to a slave farm. How much gaslighting can we pack into one book? It's harmful that the book's lesson is, when your instincts tell you someone is toxic, ignore the warning signs. You're the problem for doubting. If you just suffer long enough, you'll discover he was hurting all along for your sake. And also, you have to do the emotional labor to fix him, so that he can finally validate you in return. Finally, let's look at some key points about Creon's note and what it says about their relationship. Emelin, the first line said, "Don't em me," I had snapped at him. A pit opened in my stomach, but I read. I could do nothing but read. Immediately, Emelin feels guilt, setting up the reader's expectation that this note will absolve Creon and show Emelin to be the guilty one, not Creon. When he writes, "I'm starting to realize leaving is the best thing you could do," it sounds like caring language, but he is relinquishing responsibility, basically excusing himself for giving up. He shifts responsibility by writing, "Lynn and Tarad will do a better job of keeping you safe than I ever could." Then he moves into a trauma dump to excuse his behavior, giving his tragic backstory to build sympathy points. He says, "And I should have told you, I knew I had to, but ... Yeah, so why didn't he tell her sooner? Why has he been so unavailable their entire relationship? He continues framing himself as the victim without ever apologizing to Emelin for his unavailability. He admits to using magic once to take some of your fears, and then asserts everything else Em felt was entirely hers. He frames his singular action as merciful, protective, not manipulation. Right, but he can still read her emotions, which gives him a massive advantage in knowing how to act in order to get what he wants. He says, "And because it seems unfair for me to know your feelings while you don't know mine, M-, I've been in utter awe of you since the moment you started bargaining with me." You'll notice this is a total non sequitur. He is admitting he can read her emotions, but then flips to praising her as if that has anything to do with the manipulative advantage his powers give him. Instead of crying and crying out of guilt and sympathy, here are some ways that Emelin should have reacted if she wasn't a kidnapped, naive girl. She could be skeptical and defensive, and say, "You say that like it erases months of being left. If you could see me, why didn't you say this sooner?" Or she could verify the facts and be pragmatic, and say, "I'll verify your story with what Lynn knows, but you owe me one real conversation when this is over, no sob story notes." Best of all, she could establish a firm boundary and say, "If your silence was to protect me, then explain exactly how staying away was protection. You're distracting with a sob story about sacrificing, but you failed to explain your absences throughout this relationship." Instead, she responds with romantic gullibility and says, "Oh, I'll save you, I forgive you, I was wrong for ever doubting you." The book gives her the least agency of all the options. I internally screamed when Creon wrote, "Tell Lynn I'm sorry." How about you tell Emelin you're sorry? For kidnapping her, burning down her house and all her stuff when she begged you not to, for literally grabbing her by the wrist and dragging her into your plot to assassinate the evil Fae Queen, for making her perform as your sex slave in front of others, for giving hands-off homework assignments and disappearing instead of actually training her, leaving her to be surrounded by murderous, rapey, and racist Fae, for never communicating until now when you just trauma dump in a one-page note while playing victim. How is this romance and not just gaslighting? Court of Blood and Bindings, Chapter 22, the final chapter. Short summary. In the final chapter, M rescues Creon by launching a surprise attack on Mother and escapes with the aid of the sentient labyrinth. M convinces Thysandra, Mother's henchman, to betray Mother in exchange for a potential reconciliation with her lover Anaxia, a demon on the rebel side. Emelin's ally Terid then teleports all of them off the island to somewhere undisclosed, and the book ends. Detailed summary. It's the final chapter, yay! This is supposed to be the epic climax and denouement of the whole book. M walks through the palace, and I guess there's no guards to stop her or anything inconvenient like that, even though earlier the author kept reminding us how racist the Fae are against humans. For plot convenience, they now let a lone human walk into their important palace. A random Fae male starts hitting on M, and she pretends to flirt with him so he will escort her to the hall, so she can present her gift to Mother. M is terrified but tries to suppress it. The first thing she sees is Creon, still hanging by his wings on hooks, and the signs that he has been tortured. He has cuts and scrapes, and one of his fingers is broken backwards. Do you remember when we were told that Creon is a masterful healer, able to mend Emelin's hand in a second? It's not explained why he doesn't just heal himself, or just transmute his chains, since he's able to transmute other objects such as stone, glass, or wood. Even if he can't escape, he could at least transmute his chains to be thinner and smaller, right? So they're not piercing him as badly? Simmering with fury, M approaches Mother in her harmless-looking blue dress. Remember, red is required for destructive magic, or black because it contains red and all other colors. Apparently, M's brilliant plan that she spent all night altering her dress for was to simply sew a piece of red to the inside of her dress so she could surprise attack Mother. Remember the end of the previous chapter when she stayed up until sunrise altering the dress for this surprise attack? Please explain how it takes someone with an apprentice level of skill more than 20 minutes to sew a hidden piece of red to the underside of a dress where nobody can see it. I don't get why the author emphasized that she spent like 12 hours or something altering her dress. How is it possible to take that long? It doesn't have to be pretty since you can't see what's sewn underneath. It just has to not fall out while walking, which any basic stitching in less than 20 minutes would do. Especially if it's a more formal type of gown with a million folds and layers to hide stuff under. Anyways, wow, this was a disappointing reveal. M recalls Creon's earlier words. She's very fast. As soon as she sees you draw. In other words, it's unlikely to quick draw a magic attack on Mother, but that's exactly what M does. M shouts out, "This is on behalf of Cathra," before launching her attack using her hidden red cloth under her dress. And I'm sorry to pause here and emphasize this again, but this feels like a really silly climax. The entire book, M and Creon were plotting around a labyrinth-based attack on the throne because a direct, quick-draw attack wasn't supposed to be possible according to the book. Her shouting out, "This is Sparta!" before attacking makes it even worse. To support my point, let's take a look at all the instances in the book where we were specifically told that Emelin cannot launch a direct, surprise attack against the evil Fae Queen. Creon sighed, "It's a start. You never realized you could blend?" Remember, Emelin is a beginner at practicing magic, and she only trains for a few weeks before trying to take on the evil Fae Queen who has had thousands of years to perfect her magic, and also possesses magic of the gods. More quotes that contradict the ending scene. Walk in and blow her apart like those stones? Wouldn't work. A different chapter in the book where they're at the ballroom orgy. And what if I blasted a burst of red into her face right now? Too far. She'll notice you, finds you much more interesting. She's very fast, underlining the very. She'd see you draw an attack before you could even aim at her. Even if you got one attempt, you'd be no match for her if you failed to hit her just right. And again, Emelin recalls this same quote later for emphasis. She's very fast. As soon as she sees you draw... ... Here's another quote that implies the Fae Queen is probably the second strongest mage in 4,000 years of history after Creon. Full Fae usually end up somewhere between both parents. Half Fae tend to take the full powers of the Fae parent. Since Creon is likely the strongest in recorded history, that would imply that his mother has a power level very similar to his. His mother, the evil Fae Queen. She also has the magic of the gods in addition to Fae magic and other types of magic that she's stolen. So since Creon is the strongest and he's half Fae, his mother the queen must be very similar to him in power level according to the book's own lore, whereas Emelin is pretty much a newbie who has only trained a few weeks. Yes, Creon says Emelin's magic is pretty strong in one quote, and her true parentage is unknown in this first book, but it should be clear that the Queen and Creon are the top level magic users in this world, making it implausible for Emelin to train for a few weeks and assault her. So, after the entire book tells us Emelin cannot directly attack the evil Fae Queen, that's exactly what she does in the last chapter to resolve the big conflict in the book. And then what was the point of all the hints that her throne is her weak point? That was the whole reason they explored the labyrinth under her throne, because they said her throne is probably her weak point, since you can't directly attack her. That all turned out to be nonsense too, because in the end, Emelin just launches a direct attack while ignoring the throne. So all the times the book said you can't launch a direct attack, and all the times the book said her throne is her weak point, and all the subplot about exploring the labyrinth to get to the throne was all for nothing. Here are some relevant quotes. "There's something about her throne." "Something," I said, the skepticism thick in my voice. "She never allows it out of sight. The last time I saw her away from that room was during the last battle, and she kept a considerable force at home to protect it." "So your suggestion would be to destroy the throne first?" He nodded. "But we'll need to get to it in that case, and if she never leaves the hall, she won't." "The labyrinth," Creon wrote. "The what?" "There's a system of underground tunnels below the court, forbidden to enter. Some of them run below the hall. Might be possible to dig through the stone and destroy the throne from below." "And you don't know what the importance of that throne is?" "It may be related to her magic somehow, be a source of her powers. Korok, the god, built it for her." "Destroy thrones of unknown magical power?" I scoffed despite myself, ... a barely adult human against a high lady who'd received the magic of the gods a millennium ago. No match indeed. It would have to be the throne, the labyrinth. So yeah, it is a really strange number of plot holes to have the ending directly contradict everything the book established about attacking the villain. So anyways, M started blasting. M blasts Mother in the eyes, and then blasts Creon free, and then blasts a hole in the floor beneath him so they can fall into the labyrinth, all without any of the Fae stopping her. She magically seals the hole behind them and tries to revive Creon, who barely has a pulse after being tortured. It almost makes you wonder how he survived mitigating the pain of 7 people being tortured to death, but not one night of having a single finger broken. Emelin is stuck with Creon's unconscious body as some Fae soldier tries to blast through to the labyrinth, but M instantly downs him with destructive magic. Conveniently, the Fae men pursuing her curse the mountain, which causes the labyrinth to react indignantly and swallow them alive. The sentient mountain becomes the deus ex machina, which helps M conveniently escape Mother and her Fae henchmen. It's not explained how, but M manages to drag tall and muscular Creon all the way to the labyrinth exit where one of Finn's horses is waiting. I also don't know how Ophion or the others don't just fly to the labyrinth exit they know she must be heading towards, the same one they kept catching her at, since we're shown that flying is many times faster than walking, especially when M has to drag Creon like a sack of potatoes through the labyrinth. Instead, they just keep trying to blast through the mountain like idiot stormtroopers. Somehow, only Thysandra conveniently shows up at the exit where Emelin is, and only to become an ally who negotiates with her. After dragging Creon out of the angry labyrinth, Emelin activates another trope by saying, "It's Emelin, wake up please, I need you." And Creon just wakes up right on cue. In a super cheesy scene, M continues pleading with Creon to wake up and escape, until he wakes up and pulls her into a passionate kiss. Teeth hit teeth. My chin slammed against his as I lost my balance. I tasted blood and wasn't sure whose it was. But his lips enveloped mine with such familiar warmth, such familiar hunger, that I forgot for a moment about the world ending around us, about the seething High Lady on our heels, about Lynn and Tarad waiting for me in Feywood. It doesn't sound like she forgot any of that, but I applaud this scene for making their kiss realistically awkward and uncomfortable. Teeth hitting teeth in an adrenaline-filled messy escape sounds much more believable than a tender, enjoyable kiss. Emelin helps shove Creon into the saddle, and they seem to escape on the horse until they run into Thysandra. However, Thysandra doesn't seem interested in stopping them, and M realizes it's time to use Thysandra's infatuation with Anaxia as bait to convince her to let them pass. It works, and Thysandra agrees to pretend not to have seen M in exchange for M telling Anaxia that Thysandra is still interested in her. If that all sounds incredibly convenient for the bad guy to suddenly make a deal to help her escape, then yeah, this book has a lot of plot armor moments and power of horny conquers all moments. M and Sack of Potatoes Prince Creon ride to the Faewood seeking Lyn and Tered's help. When they see Creon, they're reluctant to help him, but M explains she is half Fae, unbound, and all the commotion on the island is because she just attacked and blinded Mother. In their shock, Lyn and Tered agree M is an asset in the war against Mother, and Tered does his racial teleport magic to get them all off the island. That's it. That's the end of the book. It doesn't even say where they teleported to. Overall thoughts after finishing the book. This book has a lot of plot holes, but overall it was very enjoyable. Other people say it is easy and enjoyable to read despite being around 450 pages. So it gives you a sense of accomplishment to finish it. I plan to make a supercut video putting all chapter analyses into one long video, and then a separate overall book analysis video. I know I've been harshly overanalyzing and critiquing each chapter, but I think overall the book is really good when you look at the genre as a whole. It obviously has some plot holes, but people are reading it for the romance. Uncritically, the romance is good, not as rapey or misogynistic as many other popular books in the same genre and time of publication. My critiques about the gaslighting narrative, the strong gender roles, and purity culture vibes are mostly a consequence of the genre as a whole. This book is actually somewhat progressive compared to where most of the romantasy genre is at.